Okay. It's better. Oh, okay, so lots of sports to discuss. Europa League final is fucking unbelievable. Europa League final is tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. kickoff UK time. Sevilla versus Roma. That is going to be a real interesting one. Sevilla have got a fantastic record in the competition, winning it a record number of times. And Mourinho's never lost a European final. So, yeah, Europa League tomorrow. There will be a match review up on the channel when I watch the game. FA Cup final on the weekend. Man City, Man United. And then, obviously, the last few days we've had all the playoff finals. Sheffield, Luton Town promoted to the Premier League. Sheffield Wednesday promoted to the Championship. Uh, and Carlisle promoted to League One. Obviously, Notts County promoted to League Two. Obviously, Leicester and Leeds getting relegated. Everton surviving on the last day of the season is a big talking point right now. So, yes, lots happening. NHL, the Stanley Cup final will be Vegas versus Florida. Vegas will have home ice advantage, which is going to be interesting to see if Florida Panthers can pull off the true underdog story. Although the way they've been playing in this in the playoffs is really interesting. So that's going to be a first-time winner winning the Stanley Cup. This is a second Stanley Cup final for both teams in the Stanley Cup. So that's going to be interesting. We're now less than a month to go until Major League Baseball makes a return to London with the Cardinals and the Cubs. That is going to be very, very interesting to see who comes out winners there, and whether Major League Baseball has taken on board the lessons of 2019. So yeah, there's a fair bit to digest in that regard. A fair bit to digest. Obviously, there's speculation around players' futures, managers' futures. Um, Obviously, the relegation of Leicester and Leeds is going to have ramifications. It's going to be interesting to see how Luton Town adapt to the Premier League. It's their first time back in the top flight since before the Premier League even existed as a competition. So 31 years they've been outside the top flight. Of course, they spent some time in the non-league in that time. It's going to be interesting to see how Wrexham do in their first Football League season in what, 16, 17 years. Notts County are back in the Football League. So there's a lot of interesting things to look forward to in the coming months. Obviously, next week we have the Europa Conference League and the Champions League finals as well. So there is a lot to ponder. Obviously, the Champions League format will be changing soon, and the changes to the format have been heavily criticised by many. And I'm not a fan of the change of format. I think this is where you wait for. I've got the European Cup competitions wrong with how they keep reformatting and rebranding them, and this is where that European Super League argument comes up, where a handful of clubs, are basically forcing UEFA's hand. Obviously, the financial model of football is not sustainable as it currently is. We know that, and obviously, we know about Everton and Man City's off-field indiscretions that are ongoing. The speed of the investigation into Man City by the Premier League is dragging. So, are all these titles that they're currently winning tainted? We shall wait and see. Obviously, Juventus have been, repunished with another points deduction. They had their first points deduction overturned. They've been hit with a second points deduction over their transfer dealings. So we are starting to see punishments handed out for the financial rule breaking of clubs and breaches of transfer rules by clubs. But they're not, I don't think, strong enough to deter the rule breaking and to control spending and to bring transparency to to the economics of things. In rugby union news, London Irish have been given a week extension to complete their takeover. They were meant to be sold today. The Premiership has given them an extra week in which to finalise the takeover deal. If that fails to go through, they could also be going out of business. So Club Rugby Union is in a bit of a mess at the moment, which is troubling. Obviously, Saracens have won the Premiership yet again, so that, you know, stripping of points and relegating them really didn't serve any purpose because they continue to dominate the English game because they have unlimited, untapped wealth basically in comparison to the other rugby union clubs. And Leicester to a certain extent, and it's not an even playing field. The salary cap is basically just breach it, and in the end, the crime pays, so to speak. Obviously, Worcester and Wasps have ceased to exist, really. And so Club Rugby Union is in dire need of reform in England. Rugby union in general is in need of financial reform, in my opinion, but that's another thing. Um, Obviously, with State of Origin tomorrow, I think with being in Adelaide, neutral location, I think this could be quite a telling match. I think that the stats state if you win the first game, you're nine times out of 10 you win the series. So um, winning this first game is crucial. Obviously, Latrell Mitchell has pulled out with a calf injury, which I find very, very interesting. They obviously gone with Stephen Crichton. You could argue that Campbell Graham should be in the squad. He's not. I think that is an error on Brad Fittler's part, having the most informed player in the game not playing. That is, in my opinion, a bit of an odd one. So there's I think 9 ex or current Penrith players who've won grand finals in the current Blues squad, and there's I think that is a very Penrith heavy team. And we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, Reece Walsh is going to make his debut for Queensland at fullback. There are 3 debutants in the New South Wales setup. So all this talk about loyalty, blah, 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 blah. Only 4 new faces are appearing in Origin for the first time. And I think all of them have at some point been involved in an Origin squad or an Origin training session. So these are some of the best players playing rugby league right now in the world, in my opinion. And it's going to be a very interesting series. And then on Thursday, the women's State of Origin series begins. It's the first 2-game series. They've upped it from 1. So they have a 2-game series, which is basically their curtain raiser for their regular season, the NRLW season, which will come in after State of Origin is completed. In just over a month's time. So Women's Origin, they've expanded that format, and then they've expanded the NRLW competition, which is really good. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks, and there's some obviously ongoing sports stories, obviously all these promotions and relegations, and I do think we're going to see a very active transfer market this summer. I think we are going to see a fair bit of player movement. We'll have to see if Southampton, Leicester, and Leeds, if some of their better players move on, and or whether they, like players like Ward-Prowse, for example, will Madison stick with the clubs they're at and try and help turn their clubs around, or whether they move on. I think Everton are going to be in a similar fight next season. I stated that in the video discussing the relegation. I still think Everton are going to be in a relegation fight next season. I can't see with their finances off the field being so precarious. I can't see them breaking the bank in the transfer market. Yes, Sean Dyche has kept them up, just much like Frank Lampard last season. The word "just." And people going, oh, well, Frank Lampard, he's not a good manager, or Sean Dyche, he had that 1 or 2 good seasons with Burnley, blah, 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 blah. the thing is, Everton have been mismanaged for 27, 28 years. They've been badly run for a very, very long time. And so when you've not had decent ownership or the investment in the right places, and apart from David Moyes, to a certain extent Joe Royle, they've gone through a lot of managers. There's that lack of stability on the bench, in the dugout, and there's that lack of direction in the boardroom. And lo and behold, the club is struggling, the club is underperforming, and other clubs have left them behind. And, they shouldn't be in the position they're in. And I think that's fact. They are a club that are in trouble. And as I say, that they've been run very badly for a very long time. They've made some poor decisions in the transfer market. They've made some poor managerial appointments. They've made investments. They've been hosed on contracts. So they've signed players to bad contracts who may be decent players, but the wages don't match the on-field production. And so there have been some questionable decisions, and there's been some questionable player development or lack of. I don't think Everton's youth academy is as good as it once was in the quality of player they can produce in comparison to rival clubs. And Everton used to have, really solid youth setup that produced quality young players season upon season upon season without fail. And that just isn't the same anymore. And then we look at clubs like Brighton and Newcastle. Brighton getting into Europe for the first time. Newcastle getting back into the Europe for the first time in a very, very long time in their highest league position since before Mike Ashley owned the club. And we're seeing these success stories, and then Everton are going the other way. So that's an interesting one. That's an interesting subplot. And then there's now controversy in the tennis with Novak Djokovic and some of the statements he's made about the situation politically in Kosovo. I find it harder and harder to like Novak Djokovic. There's no doubt on his skill as a tennis player, and he's ultimately one of the best, if not the best of all time. But he's a very controversial figure, and he doesn't make a lot of friends along the way. Famously, a lot of great champions don't, apart from, let's say, Roger Federer. Obviously, Rafa Nadal in the tennis has announced he will be retiring at the end of next year. His body's starting to break down, and he can no longer play at that elite level consistently 12 months a year. So we are seeing the end of Nadal's career. How long has Murray got left? There's a lot of young up-and-coming players who are now winning majors and getting to finals. Are we seeing the changing of the guard in tennis? I think we are. And when you've got someone as controversial as Novak Djokovic has become in recent years, in regards to the no vaccine COVID fiasco in Australia and recently the French Open, with his statements about the ongoing political unrest in Kosovo. Yeah, it's kind of hard to like controversial people sometimes when 90% of public opinion doesn't agree with the statement. But, it's a very tricky thing. Sport politics should never mix, and Novak Djokovic is trying to mix it as much as possible. So yeah, there's various things happening. Yes, Luton Town. Yes, well, they were once a top flight club, and they missed out in the Premier League by a season because they were relegated at the end of the 91-92 season, the last season of the old Division 1. And their story since 1992 has been full of ups and downs. Of course, they spent a fair spell in the non-league. And so this will give strength to Wrexham fans, I believe, and the idea that with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney as owners, that they can aim for the Premier League. If Luton can do it from the non-league to the Premier League in a decade, I think Wrexham can easily achieve that if they make the right decisions on the field and they play the game in the right way. I mean, Stockport County nearly made it back-to-back promotions. They narrowly missed out against Carlisle at the weekend. So I think Luton can give other clubs that have had lengthy spells outside the top flight or on the lower levels of the English game confidence they can get there as well. Obviously, Coventry have had their own struggles as well since they were last in the Premier League, and it literally came down to a penalty kick. But yes, I think Luton are going to find it tough next season. There's no doubt on that. It's not going to be a walk in the park. But all three promoted teams stayed up this season. So the three clubs that went down, um, you know, apart from Leeds, Leicester and Southampton have been Premier League sides for a while. So all three promoted clubs stayed up this season. So it is doable. It's becoming. This is where I think Everton are in serious trouble, and they are looking at relegation in the face at some point over the next couple of years without drastic change. Um, and it was fantastic to see so many clubs still fighting for the playoff places in the championship until the last couple of games of the season. There were a lot of clubs were playing games that mattered in the last month of the season. So, um, yeah, look, John Gurney. I mean, he tried to rename it. Yeah, he did try and merge them with the old Wimbledon. He did. When you've got there's eccentric owners who have eccentric personalities, but actually spend the money quite wisely. Then there's people who should never own a football club, and unfortunately, what we've seen over a significant period of time is that so-called directors test is a joke because the amount of owners, both domestic and foreign, who buy in not only to off but into football clubs in general, um, and don't run them properly, is, in my view, criminal. It's the best way I can describe it. I don't think Luton Town fans look back at John Gurney's time with any fondness personally, because it ultimately led to the club ending up in the non-league for a period and nearly going out of business. And look, it's not flawed; it's a joke. Having a flawed system means there's elements of it that work, but there's a significant flaw where yes, the system works, but it can fail. Unfortunately, the owner and director's test, or the fit and proper person's test, as we commonly call it, doesn't work. It's not flawed; it's broken. A flaw can be fixed. A flaw can be worked upon. It can be amended. You can work around a flaw if you have the right workaround, um, and still have a good outcome. Um, when something is completely broken, you can't work around that because it's broken. The system of team ownership, governance, financial transparency that I think should be more on the agenda. Now, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a wealthy person, and I never did good at maths. But the complex ownership systems we have in place, where shell companies to use, and then some of the sponsorship arrangements are a bit suspicious. In my opinion, the system we have is deliberately complex, no transparency, and I don't think clubs are audited regularly enough because what we've seen with clubs like Juventus fiddling their accounts. If they were not on the Italian stock exchange, they get away with that. So the Juventus owners made a bit of a blunder by making it a publicly listed company. And several clubs have been listed on the UK stock exchange, like Manchester United and Newcastle in the past. They're not now because that would have meant they would have to fully open up their books to the auditors. And at the time, both were on the stock market, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And now we know what's happened with Manchester United and Newcastle with the various owners, well, the owners that Man United currently have and the owners that Newcastle United used to have, includes Mike Ashley, that there was some sort of significant financial mismanagement. And so they took, there's a lot of celebrities getting linked with sports teams at the moment. The Ottawa Senators, Snoop Dogg's now being linked with a potential takeover. Ryan Reynolds was linked with, well, Ryan Reynolds is already involved with sports ownership, and Dwayne The Rock Johnson is already owned in a variety of ownership is already involved in sports ownership, sports investment. Let's not forget that. And obviously, yeah, he's a wrestler, he's an actor, he's a sports owner, he's a businessman anyway. He's a very talented individual. He's obviously most famous for his time as an actor and as a wrestler. But I'm just gonna move that because my back is killing me and I can't be asked. There we go. That's better. Yeah. I mean, when you can, if the situation with Southend, much like the situation with a lot of clubs, is they've not been well run. That crap out of the way. These clubs have not been well run for a significant period of time, and there's suddenly there's a trend now with Hollywood celebrities wanting to buy sports teams, and I think Ryan Reynolds has started this latest trend. He's not the first celebrity to buy a sports team. Will Ferrell has an ownership stake in LAFC, for example. Uh, Paul Newman owned a NASCAR team. So if The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is involved with it, that's fine. He's got a lot of money behind him. He's a good character. He's quite a wealthy individual, so he's got deep pockets. He's already been involved with sports ownership and sports investment. And so I don't see him as a bad candidate for a partial owner or a full ownership or being part of a consortium. The thing is, you could argue, as he's got investment in the XFL, for example, when he's involved he's obviously wanting to invest the wealth he made from WWE and cinema. As I say, he's not the first Hollywood celebrity to be involved with sports ownership, and he will not be the last. I just do think what Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have done with Wrexham, however, has started a trend. And again, I think they've invested wisely, and I think they've been advised wisely as well, and they've connected with the community. Now, the US obsession with English football, European football, because there's American money in all the European leagues, in sponsorships or investment or ownership or partial investment, stems from the David Beckham moment when David Beckham goes to LA Galaxy. Suddenly, it awakens this very niche market in the US and to a certain extent Canada into this. We've got one of the world's most marketable, one of the world's best set play specialists. We've got one of the world's best players. Is he the world's greatest, best player at the time? Probably not, but they suddenly had this marketable icon. Right. Why are they introducing points deductions? I'm assuming that's to do with fielding. Oh, so they haven't used points deductions in the. I don't know. Have they used points? No, they haven't, because you've got ineligible players. Various more reasons why you get points deductions, not just financial irregularities. The fact that for serious misconduct. See, that's different. That's now different because points deductions have only been applied if you use an illegible player, can't fulfill a fixture, and the financial administration and financial irregularities. The fact they're bringing it in now at various levels in the men's and women's game for serious misconduct is obviously clearly showing that this is obviously in response to the officials, like referees and assistants and match day volunteers, receiving all the threats and the abuse and the bad behaviour of players. That's been in the media quite a bit. Is that the referees? We've got a shortage of officials. We've got a shortage of referees and assistant referees, and you have to start base at the pub, the county FAs and the grassroots. And quite frankly, who would want to be a referee? I think this should have been brought in a long time ago. more punishments for failure to control your players. And I do hope it goes up to higher levels of the game. I think that may stop the dissent and the abuse the officials get off players. May go a long way because, as I say, look, I prefer rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey as my team sports to watch. Partly because they're more brutal and far, and especially rugby league and ice hockey, they're very fast paced. We are starting to see it now in both codes of rugby and to a certain extent ice hockey with the crowding around the officials when a decision is made and basically effing and blinding at them, swearing at them, abusing them, shouting at them. And it is starting to happen at lower levels of the game, at grassroots, youth level. And it's the same with coaches on the touchline, getting touchline bans, managers getting sent to the stands. I think they should consider as trialing it at the lower levels and then going, no, we're going to take it to the senior levels of the game. Now, in the women's game, you don't see it much. You don't see in the women's game players accosting officials. It's more of a men's game problem. Yeah, well, obviously, I was watching the NRL this weekend, and New Zealand Warriors took a home game outside Auckland to Napier, which is on the Hawke's Bay region on the other side of the North Island. And in the second half, there were multiple pitch invaders trying to get on the field in the second half. And the stewarding was poor, which doesn't help. But it was funny to begin with, and then it just got really stupid, really embarrassing. I think I think it actually ultimately cost the Warriors the game because they were actually playing quite well at that point. They're on the comeback. They're chasing down the opposition. They nearly tied the game in the last seconds. So yeah, pitch invasions. I mean, if you're playing at a neutral stadium that you don't own, the stadium operators will be the ones who get the fine because they have license. They're a licensed venue basically. They have capacity rules. There's health and safety. There's public order. You're the one hosting the event. And yeah, clubs get the fines as well, but the stadium operators do. So if you're like a football club but you don't own your stadium, and the council, let's say the council of the stadium owner, or you're ground sharing with another sport, another team, the stadium operators also get fined as well because there's lots of public order offences basically. It's classed as aggravated trespass. So, and because you're hosting a public event and that's a security breach, the stadium operators will also cop a fine as well. As I say, some of the fines for fan misbehaviour, be it racist chanting, pitch invasions, or fan disorder, are less than what players get for having an unauthorised sponsor on their boxes. Remember back in 2012 with Nicholas Bentner with the Paddy Power boxes? He got fined more than some FAs do for racist chanting at games. So it just shows where UEFA and the domestic FAs are currently at with the fact that the corporate money speaks. Do I think Ireland Irish will be safe? Well, they've been giving them a week's extension. If London Irish go, then the integrity of the competition's gone. And then you can argue, well, ring fencing hasn't worked to protect the integrity of the competition because we've now lost 3 teams that were ring fenced in there. Now you're not allowing them back in once they've come out of administration or reapplied to be registered. So what that says to me is that the current club financial model is broken, and I think I keep going back to this point. Augustine Peashot back in 2019 in that World Rugby election, and when he was going against Bill Beaumont, basically said this is going to happen unless we change our financial models. We have money in the game; it needs to be better distributed. And it's not just English Rugby Union that's in trouble. rugby union across the world is in trouble at club level. International level is completely different. It's club level. Club level is where the problems are happening right now and are a concern right now. So, in my opinion, whether London Irish survive or not, it is very, very concerning. Is that in the space of 6 months, we've had two clubs go out of business, and one on the verge of can they be saved? Will they not be saved? I mean, that is very, very concerning. I think Worcester and London Irish is more COVID. Wasps, it was moving from London, um, and moving to Coventry. It's never fully worked, and their money issues predate um, Worcester and the Exiles. Um, that's well known. Their money issues, predate Saracen salary cap scandal. They were starting to really struggle to service their debt. Um, Honestly, as I say, mistakes have been made, but I would also argue that the pandemic was a contributing factor to what has ultimately been a failure of two clubs, potentially three. We know there could be more. Apart from Leicester and Saracens, not. I think the rest of them are in trouble. Um, and that tells you all you need to know. Um, the, the way professional sport has gone, um, COVID, the pandemic, and the shutdowns and the lockdowns and the reduced capacities actually highlighted and made sped up the demise. I honestly believe, had the pandemic not happened, these same teams and these same sports and these same leagues would have had the same problems just 5 years later. Football, the financial side of football has been overheating for a while. I compare the football money crisis right now with like clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid and all their debts to the subprime mortgage crisis um, in America back in 2007, 2008, which led to the financial crash. Um, Too much debt in the system. Well, look, the 49ers enterprises are part stakeholders. They have a minority stake in the club. I'm assuming he wants to give full control to the 49ers enterprises, or the York family, I believe, is the family that basically owns the 49ers. Um, I think 49ers enterprises have about 45% of the club. They don't have a controlling stake. He still has the majority stake. Um, it's an interesting one. I mean, again, I wouldn't say it's breaking news because they already have a stake in the club anyway. They just want to increase their stake in the club, whether it's a partial takeover or a full takeover is something else. Obviously, the relegation is going to have an impact on the club finances, um, and it's going to reduce income next year. The leagues are going to make less money um, because the championship TV deal is worthless. So, and they can't charge the same ticket prices. They've got to lower their ticket price, so they're going to make less revenue. So, a potential. It's basically one shareholder looking at the other shareholder going, "Do you want to buy some of my shares?" And they're going, "How much are you willing to sell them for, or are you willing to sell a lot? Are you willing to give us a controlling stake, which I believe 75%, or a majority stake, which is up to 51%?" It's not really breaking news. We knew that 49ers Enterprises was slowly buying out Radizani for bit by bit. And I think this is going to be the plan long term, was to be fully American owned at some point. The problem is if Leeds end up in the situation they were when Peter Risdale was chairman, I don't That's not what Leeds need. They need stable ownership and stable finances. And unfortunately, they've had some very bizarre owners since Peter Risdale was chairman. Just going to put that out there. And they've had, they've been badly run as well over the last 20, 25 years. And there's a reason why it took them so long to get back to the Premier League. But I wouldn't call that breaking news. It was already known that the 49ers Enterprises, which are basically the York family, were at some point going to buy a bigger stake in Leeds United. Without their investment, I don't think Leeds makes the Premier League or stays in the Premier League for 3 seasons. The fact that on the field the team's been badly put together, hasn't played very well is one thing, but off the field, without their investment, I don't think Leeds get to the Premier League. Do I think Luton Town will survive the Premier League? Well, all 3 promoted sides this season stayed up, so it's going to be tough. They are operating on a far smaller budget than Sheffield United and Burnley. Burnley obviously kept a lot of their squad together. I think all 3 promoted clubs, I think, will be very, very interesting. They might all get relegated. The fact that all 3 promoted clubs stayed up this season is very rare. That normally doesn't happen. It'll be interesting to see how Luton Town do. I'm not going to rule them out staying up. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, but hey, look, they've made a lot of money at the playoff final. They've obviously got to spend the upgrades to Kenilworth Road. They are planning a new stadium at some point anyway. But as clubs like Brentford have proven, if you are very shrewd in the transfer market and get the right culture within the dressing room, you can overcome certain deficiencies with your squad through character, skill, youth policy as well, bringing young players through. It's a wait and see, because I think clubs like Everton are in real trouble, and as we've seen, successful clubs that have won silverware have got relegated. So for Luton, though, it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to give it a go. Their promotion reminds me a little bit sort of Blackpool and Barnsley when they were both in the Premier League. To a certain extent, Bradford City, I think, punched a little bit above their weight, but yeah, we'll see. The Championship this season, for me, could be the most exciting season there could be for the last. Well, yeah, we could, we could see it be an exciting one, but obviously you've got a transfer window. Some players will retire, other players will get sold. Players get injured. The Championship is a crazy league, absolutely crazy league. What do I think about Leicester and Leeds get relegated? I stated that in the relegation video that I did. I think Leicester and Leeds, this could be the reset that they need. I think Leicester just never got started; just had a poor season, but they've got players coming off contract, and I think they might shed some players in the transfer window because their squad's too good to have gone down. So I can see basically that Leicester squad getting broken up to a certain extent. Leeds, they need to completely, well, I wouldn't say completely change how they play, but they need to work on their defence. They need to strengthen that defence. If that means they've got to bring in a centre back or two, if that means Big Sam has to keep them up, but if with the players that's currently there, it doesn't. Big Sam can't work his magic. But they do need to have a little bit more defensive stability. They can still attack in the same way, but they need to be better defensively. But I don't think it's the end of the world for either club. I think if Everton had gone down, that's a different story and that's a different debate. Leeds have only been a Premier League club again for 3 years, and Leicester has only been 9 years. They've been back in the top flight. They haven't, had a lengthy spell. But Aston Villa bounced back pretty quickly after they were relegated out to the top 5. It took a couple of seasons. Burnley have done it in a season. So we'll see how it plays out. I think It's my honest answer. I don't think it's actually as bad as some people realise. I think this is a chance for Leicester to offload some players who haven't performed, and Leeds it's a chance for them to reset their sporting culture a little bit, their style. Um, we know Leeds going forward, they want to attack, they've got the players to attack. They just need to add a couple of more solid defensive players, maybe a holding midfielder, and they stay up. That's all they need. Two solid centre backs and a defensive midfielder. So that's all they really need, and they can probably keep the majority of that squad together. If Notto and Bamford and a few of the other players ask for transfer releases and transfer requests, and that hampers them. But if whoever's the manager there for next season can encourage those players to stay, they will get back up quite quickly. If Patrick Bamford and a couple of the others go, I don't want to stay, then it makes it tougher for them to get back to the top flight. Leicester, I think they just need to clear up. Um, yeah, I think media rights are starting to become a very, very hot topic um, for sports. And I think that's part of the problem that rugby union's facing, and it's part of the problem that there's this rumour that the Premier League might start up their own streaming service and um, break ties with the subscription TV model. Um, but as we saw with that Premier League pay-per-view fiasco, I'm not sure how that's actually going to work. And of course, it'd probably be geo-blocked for the UK audience. So I think we have to be cautious when it comes to. I think there's a point where there's only so much money to spend on media rights. I think we have reached a point now, especially with football. I think we've reached market saturation. Um, I mean, for a fact, I know I don't watch regular league play. I watch the cup competitions and the internationals. Now, obviously, tomorrow we've got the Europa League, and then next week we've got the Conference League and Champions League finals. So we've got three European finals in what 8 days, plus an FA Cup final. We've got four cup finals in 8 days um, to look forward to. And I mean, if Mourinho wins tomorrow night with Roma, that's going to be ridiculous because Sevilla in that competition are just almost unbeatable in the Europa League. Um, but yeah, the Championship playoff final is worth more money than all of them. It's ridiculous. The Championship playoff final, I think, is actually worth more money than three European finals put together now. It is the most lucrative game in club football. And I think it does generate more revenue than the World Cup final as well. It's just ridiculous. Um, and I think that actually distorts things because out of that 170 odd million, Luton automatically have to spend out on the player bonuses for promotion, which will be in players' contracts. They have to already spend £10 million on upgrading Kenilworth Road to meet Premier League standards, which is basically TV and media. It's not actually to actually change the seating arrangement so they can have VAR. Thing. And then their transfer budget is not going to be massive. Not going to be massive. I would think they would keep a good core of that squad. I don't think Luton are going to do what Nottingham Forest did, for example, and pretty much change the entire squad. They're not going to do that. They're going to keep that core of players that's got to the Premier League together. Where do I think Southampton will place in the Championship next season? God, they were dreadful this year. There's no doubt on that. They've had three managers in a season. They weren't good enough. I think if Ward Prowse and a few other players are sold in the summer or leave, that they mid table. If they can keep hold of Ward Prowse and a few of their other top players, get the right manager in, they can bounce back. If not, first season, they'll be around the playoff places. But if Ward Prowse leaves that club, he's the reason they've won as many games as they have. I think Ward Prowse probably will be leaving the club. I think he wants to play at next year's Euros, and I think he'll leave Southampton. And he could fit into any Premier League side. Imagine Luton picking him up. He would do quite well. He'd fit quite well into Luton's midfield, I think. Ascot United, yes, another local club having a cup final at Wembley. Binfield did it last year. Got to the FA Vase final, and Ascot United obviously went on to win it. So that's really refreshing to have two local clubs have trips to Wembley in the last couple of years. Really refreshing. And there was one of the lads I went to school with. I used to play for their youth team at Ascot United. So and I used to do their bins. So yeah, I as I say though, it is refreshing, seeing local clubs at the lower levels actually progressing and getting national interest and even making international news. I have no idea what overseas markets make of the lower levels of our game and outside of the professional leagues. But hey, if the right scouts were at that game, a young talented teenager might be picked up by, let's say, a League Two side or a League One side or a National League side. And I go, he could possibly play at a higher level. Let's get him on our books. So the non-league and these big events in the non-league can be a shop window for some of these players. Ian Wright, for example, came to professional football in his mid-20s. He came to the professional game quite late, and Crystal Palace scouted him, and he ended up obviously Palace and then Arsenal, and the rest is history. Jamie Vardy's another one, ended up in the non-league. Grant Holt, Ricky Lambert, I think, got picked up through the non-league. So it's a good. It can be a good nurturing pool of talent, and there's a lot of good players outside the football league who can play at a higher level, and all those players I mentioned ended up playing in the Premier League. So you can go from non-league to top flight very, very quickly. In saying that, while there are some diamonds in the rough, and these are players. A lot of these players have fallen through academies, been let go. Let's say the age of 17, 18, told they're not going to make it because either they've had that little injury or they've had that fitness concern or they might be slightly underweight or slightly overweight, not necessarily the best trainers, for example. They end up playing for a non-league side at the lower levels or a Sunday league team. They might have a run in the FA Cup, for example, where they enter the first round proper, and that's where you meet the professional sides. And of course, with all the professional side, you've got to do that pre-match scouting of your opposition, week or two in advance. And the scouts go out, watch a couple of games. Actually, this guy's actually got a bit of skill about him. And you do your research, and you, as the scout, you might ask, "What's the history on this player?" Oh well, this so and so academy, or he was released, or he's only ever played with us, that kind of thing, and you can find them. It's the same when you come to the major league drafts in the US and Canada, where some of the best players who have gone on to have great careers in baseball, ice hockey, basketball, American football, have gone undrafted, whereby they slipped through the system because they had a later growth spurt or they had that injury in when they were 17 years old, where they missed a bit of game time and they were seen as, how they developed now. And then they explode and then they're picked up. Look, this is the one of the problems that football faces, especially for lower league and non-league clubs, is away days and the costs of travel, especially at that level when you're not making any money. and if you are making money, it's we're talking not a lot. Crowd numbers aren't big at best. Sometimes you are playing in front of like 50, 60 fans in attendance. What do I think Brentford should do with Ivan Toney's contract? He's under contract. He's suspended. Players get suspended all the time. I mean, Man United didn't terminate Cantona's contract when he got a similar length ban for the karate kick. So although they've not lost a game since he's been suspended, I think they've won every game since his suspension. So I don't think Brentford have actually lost a game since his suspension was activated. Um, I think they're going to keep him. I think he's admitted to having a gambling addiction, and he's seeking therapy for it. If they were to terminate his contract, that would look really bad on Brentford's part. The fact that he pled guilty to some, if not all, most of the charges, but he pled innocent to 30 out of 290. Again, there's mitigating circumstances. I mean, if he pled not guilty, if he denied the charges and was found guilty, then that's different. But he pled guilty to 75% of them, 80, 90% of them. It would look bad on Brentford's part if they were to terminate his contract. With all the statements that Thomas Frank and the club have given, I think they're fully going to stand by him and support him. The fact that one of the mitigating circumstances that reduced his ban, by the way, was I've got a gambling addiction. I think works in his favour. Technically, he only misses just under half of next season. Sometimes you have players who miss out, like Luke Shaw, for example, has been injured a lot, or Phil Jones has missed chunks of seasons as players who get injured. I'm using two Man United players as an example. As I say, Manchester United didn't terminate Cantona's contract, and he played on with Man United for a few more seasons. They didn't terminate his contract, and he got suspended for the kung fu kick. So, how's it? And if they do, who should they sign? Well, they've proven they can win without him in the side, so they'll probably try and find someone on a free contract, free agent, or they might try and sign a player on loan for a season, or they could have someone in their academy or in their youth setup, in their under 21s, for example, who they go, right, we're going to give you some first team football. Because players get suspended all the time. I know Suarez only got 8 games for the Ebra incident, and of course he bit a few players, so he got a few games for that. But I don't think they'll terminate his contract. But as I say, he's not the only player to have issues. I mean, Mason Greenwood, for example, hasn't played for Manchester United since he was arrested. Apparently, he's still under contract. And Benjamin Mendy, I mean, he's been found not guilty in the majority of charges he was up for. Now, Man City, I believe, have terminated his contract. So I think it depends on the club and the situation. Who should Brentford sign? I don't know, if I'm being honest, but they've done all right since Ivan Toney's suspension. He's not the only player he's part of a team. It's a team game, but they do need someone to cover him long term. They'll probably give a younger player in their squad a bit of game time, I would have thought. Well, Man City's treble chances. Look, they've got 2 cup finals in a week, and they lost their last game. So, and I know obviously they've won the league, but they lost their last game, and they didn't score in that game. So that could be very, very important. People think, oh, they won the title. Yeah, they lost their last game, and when you're going into a big game like a cup final, where Man United have been a bogey team for Man City in recent years, ironically. in key games. Even though Man United can be wildly inconsistent, Man City's record in the FA Cup, actually, ironically, they choked it in big games when they've been favourites. I remember against Wigan, for example, um, Liverpool in the semi-final, um, Wigan when Pep first took over. They actually got a habit of choking, ironically, in cup finals. It's not called the League Cup. So I'm a little bit more measured in their treble chances. People are going, "Oh, this is the best side, Man City." No, it's not the best Man City side we've seen since the money came in. I don't think it's the best Man City side of all time. I think the game has evolved, and the club has got such history going back a long way, um, and they've got a habit of in big games losing, getting distracted. I think they've got a good chance of a double. But we were talking about Liverpool going for a quadruple this time last year, or towards the end of last season, and they ended up with 2 trophies. Um, and of course, you've still got the off-field issues that are lingering, and Guardiola has stated, someone's going to bring this up in a press conference, I have no doubt, that if Man City are found guilty, he will resign. And so there is still that lingering in the background. Um, but what do I think of their chances? If I'm being honest, I'm cautious. I would say they win 2 out of 3. I think they win 2 out of 3. And Guardiola's going to be targeting the Champions League more than the FA Cup because that's the trophy he hasn't won with the club. He's won everything else with the club apart from the Champions League. So that I think is the competition he wants to target whilst he's on this contract. And he has stated that he he will walk away at any time, especially if they're found out to. Well, we know they have. We know the Premier League are going to find him guilty because you won't found him guilty. When you say not the best match, are you thinking of a specific season when they were better? Yeah, they've had better league seasons. I think one year they did do was it a treble? I think they did win a. I'm trying to think now because they won so many league cups, but the FA Cup they've only won twice since the takeover. I can't remember what year that was, but they haven't broken records this season. Haaland's broken records this season. The club haven't broken records this season for points totals. And when De Bruyne is not on form, Haaland isn't as effective. And in the FA Cup semi-final, it was Mahrez that won the game, not Haaland and De Bruyne. So, as I say, um, I think in big games they have gone missing. They went missing in the Champions League final a couple of seasons ago, and they've gone missing in the FA Cup at semi-final, quarter-final, final stage multiple times. What do I think Messi and Firmino will move this summer? Well, Messi's got a year left on his. I think Messi's got an option in his contract in his favour should he want to take that third year. But PSG fans now basically think he's public enemy number one. He says he wants to keep playing Champions League football, but with the new spending rules that UEFA are going to be bringing in, no one's going to be able to afford his wages. So I don't know. Firmino, he might go back to Brazil. He might go to South America, or he might. Look, he's available. Oh, look, Brentford are looking for a striking option because even Tony's suspended and he's going to be a free agent. So imagine that if he goes down to Brentford just to play for a season. I wouldn't be surprised if Firmino ended up at a club in Europe or South America, but clubs like Brentford, for example, who do need a forward option because of a player being suspended, could he fit the Thomas Frank system? Chelsea needs someone who can score and close down and provide energy. So there's some clubs in English football who will be interested in his signature, and there are some clubs in Europe who will be very, very interested in having him for a couple of seasons. But he's not been as effective in the last 2 years as he was before. In saying that, he's still a good player and he's a good pickup for nothing apart from a signing bonus. So it all depends on how you want to deploy Firmino. Will he fit into your system? If you know, a club like Brentford, for example, needs a player to add that scoring depth because even Tony's going to be suspended. So I don't know. Messi, who can afford his wages with new spending rules coming in. Barcelona can't. Look at the amount of players who suddenly just going, we're leaving Barcelona, we're not staying on for one more year before we retire. And these players haven't announced their retirement, they're just leaving. They are leaving. Right? You've got Busquets, Jordi Alba have gone, oh, we could have been, retired. Busquets could have retired at one club, man. Pochettino go to Chelsea. Will it stop them underperforming? The situation at Chelsea, much like the situation at several clubs, is they've made a lot of. Chelsea have never had managerial stability. Let that sink in. Chelsea are renowned for sacking managers, even if they win the trophy. It doesn't matter who the owner is. It goes back to Ken Bates as chairman. And ironically, the club doesn't turn a profit. The club doesn't turn a profit, partly because of the wages and the transfers. They overdo it in the transfer market and they're overpaying players. Pochettino, apart from a French Cup and a French League title, he hasn't won a lot, has he? Very media. In my opinion, Pochettino is an overrated manager. He can improve sides, and I think he can give them a more solid footing going forward. But his best chance to win silverware consistently was at Spurs, and then he goes to PSG, and even with a stacked squad, he only won 2 trophies in his time there and got the sack. So, and the last 2 clubs he's been at, he's been sacked from. So, make of that what you will. Can he stop Chelsea underperforming? Look how the squad is constructed. Look how the Chelsea squad is constructed, and you will get your answer. It's like how the Leeds squad is constructed. All out attack defending is not a thing. Chelsea, how they're structured is they're very, very rigid in their formation. They're very rigid with their squad. There's not a lot of flexibility in how you can alter a lineup. There's players lacking confidence. There's players who are not developing. And while Pochettino can develop players, one French league title and one French cup is not really a great trophy, considering he's managed the Champions League final, which was the worst Champions League final I've ever seen. But I think he can put one forward. I think we may see some of the younger fringe Chelsea players get some game time. But I do think over a long period of time, Chelsea's win now mentality is costing them. There's none of this. We can take a few seasons to rebuild and then go again. They have to win now every season, and it's just not doable. It doesn't matter how dominant a side or how successful a side is. There will be down periods where, okay, you might not win a trophy for a couple of seasons, but it's a rebuild season where you're still competitive. Chelsea have really got their makeup of their squad wrong, and they are lacking at times some leadership in the playing group. I think Graham Potter Well, I don't think he's a bad manager. He did very well at Brighton. He did very well in Sweden. It was the wrong club for him to manage. And I think that's damaged his confidence. Lampard, we all knew it was going to be an interim. The Tuchel side of things, he's got a short lifespan as a manager for each club he's at. He can be off a difficult taskmaster. He can be very difficult on a professional level to work with. And that includes directors of football and chief scouts. He generally has breakdowns in relationships at every club he's been at. We'll see what happens with Pochettino. We will. We will see what happens with Pochettino. And it's the same with Spurs. Who are Spurs going to hire? Because again, the managers they want to target to get in there are turning them down. So again, we now have this other cycle of managerial turnaround at Spurs. And now we're seeing that Napoli have got Spalletti's taking a leave of absence. I think he's taking a sabbatical basically. The emotion of that time at Napoli has caught up with him. Won a few trophies, the league title. And Luis Enrique has been linked with the Napoli job. Oh God, he's going to make them worse. But so there's some clubs who are looking for managers, and Spurs are being turned down by available managers. Now, like Samson looking for a new manager at the moment as well. So there's a handful of clubs right now are looking for replacement managers and coaches. Is Poch the right fit for Chelsea? We'll see. This is the second full season of Todd Bowley's ownership, and Poch is the fifth. The fifth? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 managers last season. He's going to be the 4th manager under Todd Bowley's ownership, and he's the 3rd managerial appointment under Todd Bowley's ownership in 12 months. So that's troubling. That in a year, we've had 4 managers and 3 appointments. Now, obviously, Frank Lampard was an interim. But that is very troubling that 3 out of the 4 managers have won trophies at some point. All of them, obviously, have managed at the highest level. I mean, one of them won a champion, won Champions Leagues and league titles. Another one's won league, in the Swedish league, but has won silverware. Pochettino's won a league and a cup title, admittedly not in England. But look at the amount of managers that Chelsea have gone through, even before Todd Bowley, and it is ridiculous. And it's the same with Everton. It's the same with Spurs. Some of these clubs just go through managers. Man United's become a little bit of a laughing stock, although Ten Hag's won them some silverware. Can this be the turning of the corner? They win a cup double this year. Maybe it is the turning of the corner. And the success starts coming back. But if Man United have a poor start to next season, and they can't, they're back in the Champions and they can't sustain their progression, and they don't progress, which would be back-to-back Champions League seasons, I think would be progression for Manchester United. Will Ten Hag be out the door? You now have uncertainty about the Glazer ownership. Are they going to sell a partial or full stake? Are they going to move on? So there's things to think about. Afternoon. But yeah, some clubs have gone through the managerial merry-go-round quite regularly, and now they're lacking that stability, where other clubs have decided to stick with the manager to see them through. Arsenal, Arteta wins the FA Cup in his first season. There's a bit of a downturn. The club struggle a little bit. They missed out on the title from a winning position, basically, but they're back in the Champions League. And they're relevant again, which they hadn't been for a while, apart from occasionally in the FA Cup, they pop up and win a trophy. And then Arsenal's board could have moved on very quickly. They didn't. They moved on from Unai Emery very quickly, but not Arteta. I'm surprised by that. Eddie Howe's brought stability to Newcastle. Thomas Frank is now, been at Brighton, Brentford for a little while, doing quite well. So you can see where the stability comes from. Liverpool, Klopp, Guardiola at Man City. You can see these clubs with stability are doing rather well. And then the clubs who chop and change manager quite regularly struggle, and really don't reach expectations, like Chelsea, like Spurs, like Everton, and it starts to become a bit of a. Until recently, Chelsea were chopping and change manager and winning all the time. Now they're not, and now you can see that lack of managerial stability is having an impact on the players because the formation changes every week, or who's going to be the manager next week? Here we go again. We're on our X amount of managers this season. The 3 clubs that got relegated changed manager. The bottom 4 all changed manager. Nottingham Forest are the only club at the bottom 5 not to change manager this season. Coincidence? I don't think so. So, and we saw a record number of managerial sackings this year, which just surpassed previous records. So yeah, football isn't being run sustainably either, and it seems we haven't learned the lessons of the pandemic, and we haven't, and this is a sport that unfortunately, at the moment, is built upon excessive spending and debt. And I've argued, and I've done videos discussing, do we need salary caps? Do we need more spending control, more financial transparency? We need to regulate player agents a lot better, and a whole range of issues. And this is where I think we do need an independent regulatory body for the game, and we do need to look at the role of player agents, and we do need to make sure that there's more transparency within the sport on a whole range of issues. I think the new UEFA spending rules are going to be very, very interesting, because I can see some clubs just not being able to fulfil the criteria to stay compliant. And then it's going to be interesting to see how UEFA apply those rules, and then punishments for clubs that obviously can't meet the requirements, the criteria to be within the rules. That's going to be really interesting, because under the current financial fair play system, they're cherry picking the clubs they want to go after, because in reality they would have to go after 70% of clubs would have to be targeted under financial fair play, which is embarrassing. The system of financial fair play has not been effective for a very long time, and has been badly and weakly enforced for a very long time. So we've got to this point because the governing body has been dictated to by the clubs. There is this lack of transparency. There is the fiddling of the accounts. Look at the Juventus scandal, for example. And the image of the sport is, in my opinion, is not good. One of the reasons why I've started to sort of tune out of the sport in um, in recent years. I enjoy it less. I think I wouldn't say all clubs have too much power, but I think there's a cartel of clubs who want to dominate the game financially. Um, Ironically, they're the clubs with the most debt as well. But the European Super League does highlight problems with the weak governance that the game has had up to this point. I think Serafin, um, I think, is one of the few sporting administrators who's doing a pretty good job considering. And yeah, you can argue UEFA's reformatting of the European competitions could have been better. Um, but he understood the need of bringing back a third European Cup competition. Admittedly, it's the Conference League, and admittedly, it was meant to benefit the lesser European clubs from the lesser league. Ultimately, it hasn't, but there's been a couple of exceptions, but ultimately, it hasn't actually achieved that objective. Whereas a Cup Winners' Cup could achieve that objective. But he's brought back in a third tier European Cup competition. He was fully aware they had more TV negotiations in regards to the Champions League, and they had to reformat that, which they do every 5 to 10 years. I think he's got that formatting wrong, but he understood the need to reformat in part because of this European Super League threat. And he called the European Super League clubs bluff. Called their bluff. Now, he hasn't followed through with all of the potential suspensions against Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Juventus, but he could have. I think not punishing them has emboldened. I mean, Perez will not be Real Madrid president for much longer. I can't see that happening. Barcelona, they've got a lot of soul searching to do because Jordi Alba and Busquets have gone bye. They could have retired Barcelona. Great, they're going to retire elsewhere. Barcelona now have lost two of their key leaders. Yeah, they're at the end of their careers, but players are saying, I'm leaving for nothing. Bearing in mind, they could have had a year left on their contract. They could have sold them a year ago, made some money back. They're letting them leave for nothing. They let Suarez leave for pennies to Atletico and then lose the league title to Atletico. Barcelona are really, these players are like, I'm not going to renew my contract. They'll leave in the summer. When Barcelona could have cashed in on them earlier, paid off that debt quicker. Barcelona are just, they're in trouble. Now, because they elect a club president, they're one of four clubs, not to have corporate ownership. Their ownership model is significantly different. I think they're classed as a cooperative, but still, the club members have voted presidents in who've racked up over £1 billion in debt, over $1 billion US, £1 billion, whatever currency they've racked up over 1.3 billion in debt and rising. By the way, there's interest on that, and interest rates have gone up, and they haven't sold players to bring that debt down, which they could have with Alba and Busquets, for example, or when they sold Suarez, they sold him for pennies, about I think it was 6 million. I think in the end. That's thinking one of the most prolific strikers the game has seen, and one of the he had more assists than Messi that season, which is ridiculous. So yeah, you could argue Barcelona made some very peculiar decisions. They're trying to entice Messi back, but they can't afford his wages and what he's going to demand. It'll have to be a massive signing bonus. Again, they can't do that because it would be a very dodgy contract if they're paying him like a minimum contract to play, which would be a loophole around. It would be a very dodgy. Um, and so yeah, they really mismanaged their Barcelona quite significantly. Real Madrid to a lesser extent. Um, there's been some really poor economic decisions made, and people voted for this. It's like people who vote for Brexit. It's just you're voting for self harm. It's like giving an alcoholic a bottle of vodka saying it's water, and they believe you even though it stinks of alcohol. It's just they're clearly not within financial fair play. They're clearly not within the, the current financial rules, and they won't be within the new financial rules that you waive for imposing it. They're getting away with no punishment, which is ridiculous. And it's gutless. But the football's in a catch because the brand of Barcelona, and it's just no one wins. Just seeing what's happening in the sports world and seeing some of these. Oh, it's the Isle of Man TT. Tis but a scratch. I mean, I think last year 6 people died, which was classed as a bad year. 6 people died in the TT last year in all events because it's not just one race; it's multiple races and multiple categories and multiple classes. And it's like a 2 week long event. Someone getting injured is that's nothing. Wait till they start dying. And all these people go, "Oh, it's too dangerous. We've got to ban it." Fuck off. There's a reason why these guys and girls ride the TT. Firstly, you've got to be completely batshit crazy. And yeah, do I think Real Madrid's Champions League dominance will ever stop? Have both 5 years without? It is quite possible for them to go more than 5 years without a Champions League title. It was called the 80s. Look at the history of the Champions League in the 80s. It was called the 80s. Um, I think they won it once in the 80s. I think the Forest won the first year. Villa, Hamburg. I think Liverpool won a couple, and then at the end of the 80s, Stour won one. The 80s. There you go. It is possible. Look at your history. Well, they're not going to win the final this year because Man City completely pulled their trousers down and buggered them. So, and neither of these clubs play by financial fair play. So this is just like we're spending money we haven't got. We're spending a whole government's sovereign wealth fund that we have got. So, and the dodgy sponsorship deal, which we've said doesn't exist but does exist. Second contract. Um, is it the most dangerous sport in the world? Well, the TT is one of the most dangerous motor racing events in the world. Um, you've got to be completely batshit crazy to do the course at full flat out. Um, and even to ride the road and ride and drive the road normally is dangerous. But to do it at an average speed of 130 odd mile an hour average, I think Peter Hickman's got the highest average speed on the TT course as clocked average speed for the speed traps. Um, I think Peter Hickman's got the fastest lap of the course as well on the current configuration. But no, last year six competitors who entered died, which was seen as a bad year. I don't think that was the record for deaths in a year, but 6 died last year. There's at least one fatality per year on average. Let that sink in. On average, 1.5 people die a year to the numbers. So between 1 and 2 die a year on average. So if you get 6, is 4 above average, 4 to 5 above average a year. But that's not the highest death toll in a year. Just saying. And even some of the most experienced riders who ride the course quite regularly die. I think was it 2012 or 2013 the guy crashed into the pub. He'd done more laps than anyone else around the TT course and died. Oh, Spa-Francorchamps is the four is they do superbike and world superbikes at Spa and MotoGP at Spa. They've made modifications. Um, no, Spa is the baby Nordschleifer. Spa is basically the baby version of the Nürburgring Nordschleifer and GP circuit in one. Spa's the baby Nürburgring. Um, Spa is dangerous. Spa has killed people recently. The Nürburgring kills about 10 people a year. Um, that's the full GP and Nordschleifer. Um, regularly kills people. Yeah, I gave it up. I haven't ridden for just under 2 years. No intention of riding again. My back is buggered. My left shoulder needs a complete reconstruction at this point. Yeah, people don't realise I need to have a complete shoulder operation. This shoulder is had it. My back's had it. My knees have had it. Uh, um, yeah, I need a couple of operations. I've given up on it. Yeah, all the bonus off the is gone now. Helmets are gone. Gloves are getting chucked out. I've still got a pair of bike boots. Yeah, I stopped. I stopped enjoying it. Um, it was also the cost of running a vehicle, even a small little 125cc moped, but yeah, scooter. Um, it's too much. I work locally. It takes me 50 minutes to walk to work. Yeah, I could ride there in 5, 10, but it was getting too expensive to fuel it. It was getting too expensive to insure it. It was, and fuel costs was going up. And at the moment, I'm constantly living in the overdraft. Repair costs, MOTs, the running costs would have, even for a little 125, just too much. Um, and without that fuel cost, I think at one point the commute I'll be doing now to work is a lot less than the commute I was doing to my old work. Um, but I was filling up at sometimes 2, 3 times a week. With current fuel price, it's just too much. It's too much. And now we know why sports teams are struggling. If I, with a full time job, can't run a vehicle, because I would have to repair it, obviously, crash damage. But with with the rising costs of energy and inflation, you can see why two rugby teams have gone out of business and one's potentially going to go out of business. You can see why we have football clubs not being able to service their debt. You can see why attendances are down at teams that used to sell out. Attendances are down at some teams in the last last season and a half. So the cost of living is starting to have an impact on professional sport in more ways than we think. Um, there's a fat ass spider on my ceiling. I'm going to have to remove the offending article in a minute. If you got a good job with a 5%, 5,000 increase in salary, but you had to relocate to the side of the country, would you take it? Yes. Yes. If they gave me a relocation bonus, then yes. Absolutely. Happily would go bye bye. Because if it was less on the other side of the country, rents are cheaper. And if you're getting £5,000 a year more, but your rent and council tax is cheaper, I'm even more better off. And that's that's just the easiest answer I can give you. Not a hard question. Not sport related, but do you think London Irish will be saved by the amount? I hope so. This spider is unfortunately going to have to go. I'll be back in a second. You're not. Right. Sorry, I had to do that. Not having a bug landing on me. I hope that they can be salvaged. But as I said when I did the American or US ownership in English football, I did state other sports had American investment and American sponsors and partial American ownership, and now, yeah. I hope so, but they've been given a week extension. You know why? It was Memorial Weekend. Memorial Day and Memorial Weekend is like, well, we've just had a bank holiday. It's one of their versions of a bank holiday, like 4th of July. It's a national holiday. And in some states, you have Memorial Weekend or just Memorial Day. So the US has basically been in a holiday shutdown mode over the Atlantic. So they've been given a week's extension on the deal. which says to me, I'm a bit nervous. Bit nervous. I hope so. I hope so. Yes, Cornwall is expensive to live in because there's not enough available property, so property prices are high. But actually, rents aren't that bad. Rents aren't that bad. If like the size of flat I'm in now, it will be cheaper in Cornwall. The issue is if I was to buy a property in Cornwall, it's expensive because all the holiday homes and second homes and all that, and wages are very low. So yes, while I would have to take a £5 grand increase to relocate, I wouldn't get that in the job I'm currently doing. Which is why I want this to be a success, because if this can be a success and make me money, I don't have to do a crappy job, and I can then work and live anywhere. I can choose to find a place to live and move wherever I want, and not be tied down to a geographical location. Um, and so there is that. It's a shame because I have a London Irish shirt in my wardrobe. Given me, keep hold of that because that's collectible. Um, like I've got a soft spot for Irish. Uh, they're my favourite club of the London clubs. I like the Exeter Chiefs as well because I've got family from that part of the world. But I've got a bit of a sports jersey collection. Some of the jerseys I've got of teams I even support. There you go. Who knew? Um, and so, but I do hope London Irish get a solution, because if they fail it, it just highlights that the current Premiership system, there's no integrity of the competition. It's going to be weird seeing a minnow club like Luton in the Bournemouth in the Premier League. Bournemouth done it. Blackpool made it. It's not going to be that weird. I don't. I think it'll be weird at first, but once actually you get going, it becomes pretty normal. I've actually got used to clubs like Coventry, Bradford City, Leeds. I mean, Leeds obviously have been back in for being outside. I've got used to Blackburn being outside the Premier League. How weird is that? Founding club of the Premier League and the Football League being outside. It's just, you get used to it. You get used to it. No, I don't watch F1 anymore. Um, it's becoming a circus. I don't like sports that have gimmicks like sprint races. They're basically Americanizing it, so it sort of becomes like IndyCar and NASCAR. No, they're not. They're not true, and they've been in the top flight before. They've won silverware before, so no, they're not. But their home ground is one of the smallest to be a Premier League ground, but it's not the smallest. I think Bournemouth or Swindon Town have a smaller ground, if I'm not mistaken, and they or Swindon have been a Premier League club. But no, Luton have not been in the top flight since 91-92 season, so it's been 3 decades since they were a top flight club. So for a lot of football fans, they've never seen Luton in the top flight. Um, and considering that, it's not been that long since they've been out the non-league, they've been on a fair adventure. It's going to be interesting to see if Wrexham could. Well, the fact that Luton have actually done it from non-league to Premier League in a decade says yes, Wrexham I think can do it. Fulham went from what is now League Two to the Premier League the first time they got to the top flight. So it does show it is doable to go through the levels of the footballing pyramid and make the top flight and get up the ladder. But then I would use Yeovil Town as an example of a club that went up the ladder from the non-league through the Football League to the Championship, and then are now down in National League South. So there's a way of doing it, and there's a way of not doing it. So we'll see how long Luton can stay around the Premier League Championship kind of level, and if they end up falling back down the ladder again. I would use Bradford City, Portsmouth, Leeds are another example. I mean, Blackburn is up in League One as well. There are several clubs I would use as examples of it's gone wrong, and it's taken a long time for them to get back to the level they initially were at before the relegations. And in Blackburn's case, they haven't made it back to the Premier League yet. Obviously, Oldham, former Premier League club, now in the non-league. Scunthorpe United, gone from the Championship to National League South for next season. Torquay, another one, former Football League club, now in National League. So there are some warning signs. I think, yeah, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have definitely hinted that they are willing to stick this out long term. This isn't a short term one off. This gimmick. This is a long term investment. Ryan Reynolds was also interested in buying the Ottawa Senators in the NHL. Um, Before it became quite clear that his bid was not one of the preferred bids, they just didn't get enough of further investment involved in their consortium. But Snoop Dogg's involved with an attempt to buy the Senators now. Um, so there's, I think, 3 or 4 interested parties involved with the Ottawa Senators takeover in the NHL, and so I think they have the patience. I think they already invested enough. Um, they made a loss in their first year, I believe. So they put a lot of capital investment in on the line, money on the line, and I don't see them selling up anytime soon. I can see this being a long term project for the pair, and they might get further investors where they might encourage some more celebrities to and on high profile media figures to be willing to invest. So yeah, um, I think they've invested wisely so far. They've put a lot of capital into the rebuilding the Cop stand. They're doing a bit of stadium redevelopment, so they've been willing to pump money in, and that includes on the refurbing and redeveloping the stadium bit piece by piece to bring it up to international standards. They want the Welsh national side to play games there again, at the racecourse ground, because in its state before it wasn't up to UEFA and FIFA standard. They want to get it back to the UEFA and FIFA standard. They want to make it an all-seater again, which means developing the Cop end. So yes, I think they do have the patience, and I think they are willing to invest long term. I do, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. Um, I mean, look how long the Glazers have been involved at Man United at this point. Fenway Sports Group, they've stuck it out at Liverpool now for quite some time. So yeah, I think these are not short-term gimmicky investments. The American owners seem to be in for the long haul. They A lot of them seem to be in there for the long drawn out period of time, because they want to buy in and then hand over to their kids at some point, or another relative like a cousin or a nephew at some point. They want to get in there and then get a younger family member to replace them when they reach that old age kind of thing, and they stand aside or pass away. It's sort of like handing down. I built this business with my bare hands, kind of American dream kind of thing. Um, and I don't see them going away anytime soon. And as I said, when I did the American ownership in English football video, the US ownership, there's a lot of clubs. I think 1/5 of clubs from the National League upwards, because I included Wrexham in the National League, but 1/5 of clubs in the top 5 levels of English football have American investment in them. That is ridiculous. Um, so that just shows the interest that the US have in our sports market. But it'd be interesting to see how the Americans would feel if we started buying their sports teams. That'd be interesting. Kevin Durant is big in sports investing. He's invested in pickleball, in pro volleyball in the US. Um, Look, as I say, to me, I'm not. It would be interesting to see how the US sports fans feel about us owning their sports teams. Apart from David Beckham with his Inter Miami, because how the US sports fan base would be if we started buying into their sports teams. They own 1/5 of English football clubs in the top 5 levels. 1/5. Let that sink in. Let it sink in that they own nearly 1/5 of our football clubs at the top end. Imagine how the Americans would feel if 1/5 or 1/4, so 20 to 25% of their professional sports teams were owned by foreign owners. Let that sink in. They're willing to buy all our best sporting assets. How would they feel if we bought their best sporting assets? I don't think they would like it. I think they would have a complete and utter meltdown. Complete and utter meltdown. And I'm not sure league rules in certain pro leagues allow it. We shall see. Kevin, 6 deaths like last year's Isle of Man TT. I knew about that. 2 per sidecar, 2 passenger, and 2 super. Yeah, I knew about that. As I stated, that was seen as a bad year for the Isle of Man. I don't. I'm just going to double check the most fatalities of the Isle of Man TT in a year. But yeah, the Isle of Man TT. I mean, deaths. Isle of Man TT most deaths in a year. 2005, 11 people died in 2005. The deadliest year was 2005, when 11 people died. 3 riders and 1 marshal died during the June race, and 6 riders and 1 course bystander died during the Manx Grand Prix in August, September. Because obviously you've got the Manx Grand Prix in the end of the summer, and you've got the TT in June. The only year since 1937 with no fatalities was 1982. That is ridiculous. Right, let's have a look at. There's graphs and charts here, so I'm going to have a little look at the Isle of Man TT. Let me just do my research. And this is a fatal. Deadliest year was 2005. Racing deaths, other deaths. Right, racing deaths. Oh god, the first fatality was in 1911. Wow, this is just ridiculous. 1923, there was 2. Wow. 27, there was 2. 29, there were 2. 33. So from 1937, only 1 year. There's a lot of them. Oh my god. 48 was a bad year. 1950 was a bad year. 51 was 51 was a very bad year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 died in 1951. 52 was a bad year. 53 was a bad. Some of these. This is just ridiculous. Oh my. Right. Let's get to the bottom of the list. Jesus. So far on the mountain course, 266 people have died. Wow. So 2022, Mark Perso died on the 1st of June. Balagari Corner. Cesar Chanel died on the 4th of June at Ago's Leap. Davey Morgan died at the 27th milestone. Roger Stockton and Bradley Stockton, the other 2 sidecars, died at Ago's Leap. And then Olivier Lavarelle died of his injuries at the Manx. Oh, wow. 1 person's died in motor racing on the Douglas, so it's just ridiculous. Other deaths. Okay. 2 have died as competition race officials, in the parade lap. 2 have died in the lap of honour. 1 in 98, 1 in 2003. Unofficial comp testing, 3 people have died. Spectators, 2 have died. Non-competition spectators, 4 have died. By nationality, If you're English, 118, or the UK unspecified 64, Northern Irish 10, Scottish 9. So basically, the total for the UK deaths is 207. Isle of Man, so local Manxman, 18. New Zealand, 8. Australia, 8. Ireland, 6. Sweden have had 3. Japan have had 3. Dutch have had 3. The Swiss have had 3. The French have had 3. Germany's had 2. Austria's had 2. Italy's had 2. Spain's had 1. South Africa's had 1. Malta's had 1. Southern Rhodesia, or Zimbabwe's had 1. And Czechoslovakia has had 1, but that's obviously before 1993. So 280 people have died. That is 265 riders and 15 spectators, marshals, and police officers. That is ridiculous. That is frigging ridiculous. That is just madness. Madness. Absolute madness. What's the most dangerous corner? Um, Oh my god, so many people are like, "Oh no, it's so dangerous. Why is it not banned?" Because it's motorsport, and motorsport is dangerous. I just don't get people. Some people melt. But yeah, so 2005, 11 people died. It's, it, at the end of the day, there's a reason why Valentino Rossi went there nutters. I don't want to do it. Possibly the greatest motorcycle racer of all time has basically said, "Nope." Rossi did, I think, he did a test. He's gone round on the mountain course. He's done a test on the Isle of Man course. I think he did a race distance test where he did the race distance laps on a test run, and he went, "No, I'm not doing this. This is nuts." He went, "Nope, nope." So when Valentino Rossi goes, "Not doing it," that says a lot about how insane these riders are. The fact there's already been an injury is, and we're not even into the proper race week yet. We're in these are the practice qualifying. Is, yeah, a bit worrying, a bit troubling. Um, but no, I don't think the Ottoman TT should be banned. We It is a true test of skill. True test of skill. But I don't think it should. But yeah, the fact that 2005 was just a bloodbath that year, that's including the Manx Grand Prix as well. That and last year was bad. That was considered a bad year. 2005, yeah. But I don't think the Ottoman TT should be banned. Um, road racing tourist trophies for motorcycle racing is just something. It's just something different. It's on my bucket list to go. I will say that it is on my bucket list to go. And I've been watching the TT since I was 3, 4 years old. As I say, it's been on my bucket list for a long time. But to get tickets, it's so hard to get tickets. It sells out almost immediately. Um, but like, people are saying, "Oh, we should ban it." It's like, oh my god, we now give out participation trophies in school, and kids don't know how to lose. Some people don't like the Welsh team in the year, but I've noticed social media. look, this is why I've got rid of my Twitter. All the Welsh clubs that have signed up to the Football League and hopefully the Premier League one day again with Cardiff, Swansea, Newport County, Wrexham, whatever. They've always been part of the English league system. So I don't understand why on social media people are getting crappy. I mean, Wrexham, for example, is the third oldest club in existence. And I've got no problem with Cardiff, Swansea, Wrexham, Newport County, for example. I think is it Merthyr Tydfil town, being part of the English league system. I've got no issue with it. We're not the only league system to have clubs from another country play in that league system. You know, they do. It happens in Switzerland with a couple of clubs from Liechtenstein play in the Swiss league system because they're too good for their domestic league system. It happens in San Marino and Andorra. They play in a different league system because their clubs are too good for the league system they're in. So I don't see the problem with it. And yeah, well, I don't get it. It's historical. I'm grateful for giving us a chance. As I say, I don't. This is why. This is one of the reasons why I got rid of my Twitter account. Firstly, it wasn't really benefiting the channel whatsoever. I'm being brutally honest. It really wasn't. And it is. I see when, like, for example, Paul Kent, the NRL 360 journalist, and all his legal issues over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, I didn't have Twitter out. I literally just deleted my Twitter, but I've still got my Facebook, my personal Facebook. And I was going through some of the comment sections, and I'm thinking, my God, seriously? Now, I'm kind of grateful. I mean, one, I would say, below the belt comment got on the video that I posted in regards to him being suspended and stood down. And I've let that comment stay up because there's no actual swear words. It's just Australian slang for, adult sexual activities between consenting adults. But to me, that's not overly offensive, like effing and blinding, death threats, and kind of stuff. But I was going on other, sports pages on Facebook, and I'm thinking, just turn the comment section off for this. This is becoming, it's become a sewer, and in most people's eyes, he's already guilty because for whatever reason, certain rugby league fans don't like it. And I was like, I'm kind of glad I got rid of my Facebook. I'm kind of glad I only post funny things on, I'm sorry, I got rid of my Twitter. Look, I know we're talking about social media. We're on a social media platform right now. The irony of that, while slagging off social media, but I find with YouTube, there's only a handful of channels I watch every day or check in on and like their content, and I've been kind of lucky with my comment section that it's been reasonably acceptable. Facebook I don't take seriously anymore. I use it more for just sharing funny videos and memes. It's not what it was when I first got it. It's definitely morphed into something I don't like. And I could quite happily live without it, if I'm being honest. Um, I could quite happily, live without Facebook because I don't like what it's become. The only one I think has had its ups and downs, but I think is going in the right direction is YouTube. The controversy seems to have come off YouTube and gone on to TikTok, gone on to Twitter, gone on to Facebook, Instagram to a certain extent. I think YouTube. I think ironically the controversial YouTubers have gone to TikTok. And please take all the dopey viewers with you because I've noticed Younger viewers aren't watching my videos. I've got people over the age of 70 watching my content. I've got people who are basically retirees who are watching my content. There's no school age, college age teenagers from the age of 13 to 18. None of that age demographic watches my content anymore. They've stopped watching it, and I don't understand why. But so I think TikTok has drawn away, the a large demographic of teenagers basically. So young people aren't engaging. It doesn't seem as much with sport. I think obviously because I think as you get a bit older, you get a bit more invested in your football club. Instead of just watching it because you just enjoy it, like I used to, you actually sit back and appreciate what other clubs do, and you take a more worldly view on things, or rugby league, or whatever sport it may be. Take that a little bit more worldly view, and then you understand how the mechanics of the sports work behind the scenes. But yeah, no young people are really watching my videos. I don't like. I've never used TikTok. I don't like it. I don't want to use it. I have no interest in it. There's lots of security flaws with it. I'd rather the Chinese didn't have my personal data. Just saying. Oh no, I can get by without YouTube for a little while. That is doable. I've got enough books to keep me entertained for about a year, if not 2 years worth of books. I've got DVDs. I mean, I haven't used Netflix for 6 months, 5 months, some 5 6 months. So I can get by. I never had a MySpace actually. I'm that old to remember MySpace and Bebo, but I never had Bebo. Never had MySpace. Um, and yeah, I think social media has dumbed people down. I think social media I'm going to do a video on the relationship between sport and social media because I honestly think the relationship started off very very well, good um, positive space, and it's become very toxic very very quickly. And I think we need to break from social media. I think we need to roll things back a little bit. Um, I think the last decade and a half has definitely shown us the dark side of the tech industry when it comes to our data collection, when it comes to moderating content, which is a big thing right now, um, to the relation and to the abuse that athletes and club officials and match day officials face quite regularly on social media. It's almost now become like running the gauntlet, um, and I'm I'm very troubled with the direction we are heading in. Maybe we've got market saturation. Um, my thoughts on the Vinicius Junior, the racism. Look, the players have a players' union. They need to go on strike. They need to hurt their employers, the clubs, financially for them to really take this seriously. That's the only way I can see progress being made. Otherwise, what's the point of having a workplace union if when you go to work you're getting racially abused? If that was happening at my workplace, the would be out or suspended or whatever. I would say, yeah, the players within their union need to vote for strike action. Follow through with that. It will hurt the clubs because they lose revenue. It will also hurt the players financially, but it will hurt the clubs. And they will have no choice because the image we say about it, the players are going, we've had enough. Then you need to have the League Managers Association. It doesn't matter if it's Spain, it could be any league in Europe, right? You've got the PFA here in the UK, And you've got the League Managers Association, you've got the Professional Footballers Association, the Players Union, the League Managers Association, the Managers Union. They need to go on strike and refuse to work until the clubs actually have the balls and the governing body to take serious action. Because then it embarrasses people like the FA and UEFA and the Premier League and the Football League and La Liga and Liga and Bundesliga. That's what needs to happen: is a collective day or week of strike action by players and managers, and suddenly I think the problem will very quickly solve itself. That's all that needs to happen: is a collective pan-European player and manager movement with their unions to go. This is what needs to happen. Very quickly, suddenly the problem will very quickly solve itself because no games were getting played, and you can't make money without kicking the football around for 90 minutes. So yeah, very quickly the problem suddenly fixes itself because the clubs, the leagues, and the football associations suddenly have to do something. Rugby World Cup is really creeping up. Is it going under the radar? I don't hear much about it. Yeah, it's going under the radar. I think it's going under the radar a little bit. We haven't seen a lot of promotion at this point. I think as the summer goes on, the French sporting year is French Open, Tour de France, Rugby World Cup. That's how this. And so, while until the Tour de France is participated for in July, the French will not promote the Rugby World Cup. We won't see a lot of ads for it. We won't see a lot of we won't see a lot of promotion for it because the French sporting calendar is French Open, Le Mans, Tour de France. Once those three big things that happen every year are out the way in the French sporting calendar, then if they are hosting another tournament, bang, they promote it. But they're the three big ones. For the French sporting year, every year is French Open, Le Mans, Tour de France. In that order, without fail. And this year is the 100th Le Mans, so 100th year of Le Mans. So that's got a lot of promotion. They've been banging on about it being the 100th anniversary since the first race of 24-hour Le Mans. Who's going to win the French Open? Yeah, the Rugby World Cup in September. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup Finals prediction? I'm going Florida. They've had that extra couple of days rest. And Vegas, they've had to play 2 extra games. They lost control of that series a little bit. They're 3-0 up. They lose back-to-back games, so they've had to play 2 extra games, 3 extra games to tie that, finish that series. I'm going with Florida because they're more rested. The players are brought in. What Paul Maurice is coaching. They were President's Trophy winners the year before. Generally, when you win the President's Trophy the year before, you go on to win the Stanley Cup, ironically, because the President's Trophy does. Nadal's not competing in this year's French Open. He's not fit enough. I think Djokovic, if he wants to cement himself as the greatest of all time, will have to win. But there's so many up and comers now. It's a very open field this year. Yes, imagine if they had all gone to penalties. That was ridiculous. Sheffield Wednesday left it very, very late. I think it was the last minute. They won the game. But that just shows how evenly matched some of these sides actually were in the regular season. People going, What is interesting is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Luton were 3rd overall in the Championship. I think Sheffield Wednesday were 3rd overall in League One. I think. And Carlisle were always in the playoff places regularly in the season. So there's something a bit interesting about where the clubs finished and how long they were in the playoff races, playoff hunt for, and the promotion places for. So that sort of, does it? It depends how you use your substitutions, and with now 5 subs now rather than 3, if you use your substitutions really wisely, you can. Let's say the other side have used all 5 of the 19, you've got 2 left over for the extra time, you just throw them on. You've suddenly got those fresh legs coming on, which can change your game. It also depends how you pace pace yourself, how how fit your players are, um, with that, fitness, um, how much possession you have, momentum swings, how you control your emotions, teamwork, your tactics. There's a whole range of factors that um, adds to extra time. I felt in the World Cup, for example, the extra time, some of them were really entertaining. Teams actually went for it more in extra time than in the 90 minutes at the World Cup. But look, playoffs are done now. Promotion relegation sorted out now. The club season officially ends when the Champions League final is played. That's the European club season done. And then obviously we've got summer off. Got the Women's World Cup. We have the men's Euros next summer. So to me, we've obviously got the summer. There's going to be some very interesting transfer news. We may see some managers replaced. Obviously, Tottenham are looking for a new manager again. So there's some clubs that I think are going to be changing manager in the summer. Should all the playoffs be played at Wembley? I think playoff finals, yeah. I think cup finals and playoff finals, because that's class the silverware, yes. Semi-finals, no. I don't think the FA Cup semis should be played at Wembley. I think neutral grounds. I think League Cup semis neutral grounds. I don't. Wembley's becoming a bit of a discussion point in regards to how many club games in the cup competitions and the playoffs should be played there. It's also becoming a debating point with the Challenge Cup and the Rugby League. It's becoming a bit of a topic because of Club Wembley, the attempted sale 5 years ago to Saeed Khan, the owner of Fulham Football Club, and how that didn't go down well. Obviously, Greg Clark eventually resigned from his position 2.5 years later. He was gone. So I think Wembley's becoming and because taxpayers, there's a lot of discussions with Wembley and bits and pieces about it and how many games played there, a whole host of things. I think the NFL contract runs out in 2024 when Jacksonville play their last home game there as the home team. After that, do all the NFL games in London go to the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, or does Wembley negotiate an extension with their contract with the NFL because the NFL says 3 games per year are played in London? Stadium availability and all that. So yeah, the NFL, Wembley has been one of them for a long time, where it's becoming a bit of a hot topic. Major League Baseball obviously coming back next month to use the London City Stadium and the London series, and they again made this commitment to 2026. Get rid of 2-legged semi-finals in the League Cup. That's if a non-Premier League. Yeah, again, fixture congestion. How do you reformat it? I would say put the League Cup back on free-to-air TV like it used to be. You get a wider audience. You might get more appreciation for the tournament, like the FA Cup has. When Cardiff made the FA Cup final, it wasn't as special because semi-finals have been played. Yeah, I think it does. When Wembley's expensive stadium go to, the ticket price is regularly criticised. Rugby league fans have been criticising it for a while. The RF Rugby Football League, the RFL, are considering their options post 2027 for the Challenge Cup final. Last year, obviously, they played it at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium because the Women's Euros was on, so stadium availability. Still played in London, though. And obviously, they've played in Cardiff as well. I think they've taken it to various stadiums when Wembley was being redeveloped. But it's that Club Wembley, it's the ticket price, it's getting there. It's everything about the stadium, the seating positions, the angles of seating, how far away you are from things. It's one of those stadiums that To be honest, I'm not. I don't think it's an attractive looking stadium. On the inside, it doesn't look great. Um, yeah. I've been past it on the North Circular, and I've been past it on the train. It's a bloody hideous, hideous thing. The Emirates is a more attractive stadium than Wembley. If Wembley looks similar to the Emirates, I would probably like it a little bit more. But as I say, they should have at least kept the original two towers, the white towers of Wembley. The fact they didn't keep them as part of the new build, I think, was a mistake. They should have incorporated them as part of the refurb and the rebuild, and they didn't. I felt that was a mistake um, because they were iconic on Wembley Way. That was an iconic thing about London. It was a tourist thing as well. It brought people to Wembley just to see that part of the stadium. A lot of decisions surrounding Wembley, the cost of it, yeah, but it was a tired old stadium. Like it was, opened in 1923. It was knackered by the end. It gone through several reconfigurations, but it was a bloody old stadium by the time they knocked it down. I mean, it was 78 years old when they knocked it down. It had done its duty, but they could have kept the two white towers, the Wembley Towers. If they had kept the Wembley Towers as part of the new stadium and incorporated them in the build, that would have been fantastic. Because now I think it looks soulless. It doesn't have the same impact that the old stadium did. For all its flaws, the old stadium, the current one looks soulless. It doesn't have the same traditional feel, romantic feel, and the old Wembley was iconic. A lot of modern stadiums look soulless. Some do look kind of cool, but a lot of them just they don't have that vibe, that atmosphere. Um, but you obviously got to modernise stadiums to meet UEFA standards, um, refurb, redevelop. You know, obviously some clubs have completely moved to new grounds and demolished their old ones. Other clubs have refurbed in place. Um, but yeah, no, I'm not a fan of many modern stadiums because they're all generic. A lot of them. Um, and a lot of them have lost a bit of that soul and that atmosphere where it's not not the same. But there's some iconic stadiums out there. I mean, the San Siro is going soon. That's getting knocked down. So some of the most iconic stadiums in sporting history are going to see their last um, games played and last major events hosted. So will the new Everton be the same? Well, look, they've got to try and remain a relevant Premier League side first and foremost. Um, and we don't know if they're going to get a points deduction for their financial off-field problems or a transfer. They got a transfer embargo. I think that's just as damaging because that will just equally relegate them because the squad isn't good enough. Um, but again, as with Everton, as with other clubs with stadium builds, they're banking a lot on this new stadium, and it's costing them a lot of money. Will it be the same? I'm not sure how the fan base feels. I mean, look, Bill Kenwright's been hinting at moving from Goodison for 25 years. So this is not like a new idea that suddenly the last couple of years, oh, we're going to build a new stadium. This has been on the planning table for 25 years. I'm surprised they haven't done with Goodison what Liverpool have done with Anfield and slowly built in place and improved in situ. Um, I think that's another mistake that they've made on the Everton board. Um, and there's a whole host of other issues with the stadium build and planning permission and potential bribery and corruption and a whole host of shite. Um, so that's another one of this Yeah, it's going to be in the docks. They've already started construction. It's due to be completed, I think, in 2025, the 2025-2026 season. That's if there's no overruns and delays. But will they still be a Premier League club by then? Because look what happened to Coventry City with the moving out of Highfield Road to what is now the Coventry Building Society Arena, formerly known as the Rico. That became a disaster. They re you know that that's hindered the club massively. Yeah, it's going to be part of the Dockland redevelopment of the old docks, the disused docks, not the current docks, the disused ones. But it has cost them their UNESCO World Heritage status as a city, and it's also cost some people some of their liberty because they've been arrested and charged with fraud and corruption and bribery. So there's all sorts going on. Liverpool does have a dark side as a city. I can definitely attest to that. But at the same time, if you're a tourist, it's actually pretty friendly. A lot of Liverpool's issues are to do with gang violence, gang on gang, rather than criminals targeting tourists or visitors. Um, but Liverpool does have problems of the haves and have-nots. Liverpool's a mini London, basically, or a mini Manchester. Not that much more than Manchester, but Liverpool's like a mini London. Um, Manchester's of an equivalent size, I actually think. Liverpool, much like some other, you know, sizable cities in this country, it's just a slightly smaller version of London. Um, and London's got its problems. Um, every major city has issues. Nearest capital for North Wales. It's the nearest big town, big city to North Wales. But then you've got Chester as well, and Warrington um, as well nearby. But no, yeah, Liverpool. It surprises me with Liverpool that rugby union doesn't have an imprint in the city. Rugby league, St Helens, which is outside, but it's part of Merseyside, but isn't part of Liverpool. Um, it's football that is the dominant sport, but things like cricket, rugby union, and rugby league has a small imprint on the city, but not massive. It's very interesting how their sporting culture in Liverpool is drastically different to Manchester. Um, Merseyside is football mad. You go to Greater Manchester, you've got multiple sports where you're playing at the top level. Um, Rugby union, rugby league, cricket, ice hockey, and of course football, and at the lower levels as well. Whereas in Merseyside, you've got one rugby league team at the top level, which is St Helens, which is actually quite separate from Liverpool. If you actually, there's a bit of a gap between St Helens and Liverpool. It's like well outside, but it's part of Merseyside, and Everton and Liverpool. And then of course you've got Tranmere across the Wirral, and that is Merseyside. Um, Liverpool FC being the bigger club wasn't always the case. Um, but it is an interesting how the city identifies. It's 2/3 Liverpool, 1/3 Everton. On Merseyside, it's about 50% Liverpool. I would say about 35, 40%. I'm going to say about 35% Everton, and then the rest is Tranmere fans, actually. Tranmere actually has a sizable fan base up in Merseyside. People tend to forget that you've got the other side of the Mersey and the Wirral, but Birkenhead, which is the Wirral, which is Tranmere country. So yeah, people definitely forget that there is another football club in Merseyside. Um, it's the nearest professional teams of any level. I mean, obviously Ian Rush, Neville Southall will have an impact on that, being high-profile Welsh internationals. Of when both clubs were at their peak success in the 80s, in the modern era, that would obviously have an impact on the next generation of fans in the 90s, and then of course they have kids, so our generation, and so on and so forth. When you identify with your national side and you see the best of Welsh talent playing in Merseyside, the two biggest clubs, that's going to have an impact when it comes to supporting said clubs and growing the game. This is where Gareth Bale going to the MLS, Gerrard going there, Beckham, Rooney, some of the English players, Kaká, they go over to the MLS, and suddenly the North American fans have bought into the sport and are now interested not only in their domestic MLS but also in our league. So when you get that star player who joins a team or moves from one league to another, it can have that impact of growing the interest because they're known by casual sports fans who may not follow the sport religiously. They know who he is. He comes here. You start talking about it. Becomes talk of the town. Bang. No, they support Tranmere on the Wirral. Birkenhead, it's Tranmere. That's the club. Prenton Park is the place to be. Yeah, Tranmere has got a sizable fan base. And when you cross the Mersey and you end up in Birkenhead, it's Tranmere Rovers when you're on the Wirral. Oh, yeah, you've got the River Dee, haven't you? Yeah, between the Dee and the Mersey, it's Tranmere. That's their little catchment area. It's just that. Just that. Of course, you're going to have Liverpool and Everton fans living there as well. Probably fans of Chester. But that's Tranmere. My Tranmere videos do quite well. And yeah, as I say, I think because of the media's obsession with Liverpool and to a certain extent Everton, not so much in modern times, apart from if they got relegated, the media would have exploded. Tranmere gets forgotten. They've got a sizable fan base, and I have no doubt they could end up, higher up the footballing pyramid at some point. And they've been in the non-league as well for a little bit. Only a little while, but they ended up in the National League for a while. They had some tough times, and now they're quite a well-established football league side again. Yeah, but it is what it is. But no, certain cities, it's very obvious where the rivalries are, the divide is. Like Bristol, for example, it's very obvious you're in a Rovers part of town or a Bristol City part of town. Sheffield, it's very obvious this is a Sheffield Wednesday part of the city, and this is a Sheffield United part of the city. You can definitely see certain divides in certain neighbourhoods between clubs. Well, Bournemouth have been a pretty established Premier League side apart from one season for like pretty much a decade now. Brentford have proven it is doable, but they're well run. Luton, their story over the last 3 decades is just from top level to the non-league back to the top level. It shows how quickly you can go from being at the top, getting to the bottom, getting back to the top again. It's about 15 years each way over a 30-year period. It shows how quickly things can go wrong and how quickly you can just get on a run of promotions and stability and working your way back up. But it just shows how in a generation they've gone from top flight to top flight via non-league. Look, Kenilworth Road. Yeah, look, I think Luton have put in for a new stadium as well. Ideas are on the table. I think they're planning for 2025 to have a new stadium open. With a slightly enlarged capacity of what they have now by like an extra 9,000-10,000. So they're planning for a new stadium build. They're planning to leave Kenilworth Road. But it's like similar to Fratton Park with one of the entrances for the away end. Oh, look, the Bristol Derby, what Rovers City? That's going to be mental. I think '96 was a bad year as well. 90, they haven't played regularly for a while. Um, that is true. They haven't played regularly for a while. Um, but you know, that's one of the forgotten rivalries of English football because they hate each other. They actually hate each other. It's not even friendly. It's quite dangerous rivalry. Um, People forget Swindon Town have been a Premier League club. Oldham Athletic have been a Premier League club. So there you go. Or when you have like a very what? When you have like two clubs in the same city, going at it. The Sheffield derby, the Steel City derby, is quite an intense one. Um, the Yeah, I will agree that the Bristol derby is quite intense. The Merseyside, the Liverpool derby, Liverpool Everton in Merseyside is quite fierce on the pitch. To a certain extent, off the pitch as well, there's been trouble. The Manchester derby is is quite intense. Obviously, the old firm in Glasgow. You can throw Partick in there if you want to, because they're non-sectarian, which makes it interesting as the balancing out with the fan bases in Glasgow. The capital derby in Edinburgh, and then you've got the various London derbies between clubs of north, south, east, and west. Um, and there's some real hatred there, real hatred. Um, when you're in a smaller city, so Glasgow's got multiple clubs actually. It's not just Rangers and Celtic. You've got Partick, you've got Queens Park. So you have multiple clubs in Glasgow. It's not just the two club city that people think it is. Edinburgh technically is a three club city now with Hibs, Hearts, and Edinburgh City in the professional leagues. Um, so Dundee's a two club city, but they share one firm, and it's a friendly rivalry between Dundee and Dundee United. Ironically, now it didn't always used to be like it used to be a bit nastier back in the day. Um, but no, when you're in a smaller city and you've got two clubs in the city, it can be quite. I mean, look at what happened between Barcelona and Espanyol this season, with the Barcelona players celebrating winning the title at Espanyol's ground. The Espanyol, all the fans try and kill them. No, I think actually Carlisle fans realise there's more money in the English game than the Scottish game. The Scottish game, they don't make any money. Um, let's be honest. Um, oh no, there is hatred on the Merseyside derby at the moment. There is actual hatred. Um, not as much as when a Manchester club plays a club from Merseyside, but when the intercity derby, the derby between the clubs in the city, there's a bit of friendly rivalry there. I think more so on the Merseyside side than the Manchester side, but they, yeah, on the pitch, it can get quite nasty. And then you got a place like Germany where you've got Hertha Berlin, Union Berlin, 1860 Munich, Bayern Munich, um, St. Pauli, Hamburg, for example. Um, yeah, there are there's some real intense rivalries, in like Lazio, Roma, um, Torino, Juventus, AC Inter, Chievo, and Hellas Verona. There are some big intercity rivalries where you're in the same city and it's just you're going out. Salford, Stockport. So did Union Berlin. Dortmund and Union Berlin blew it, so Bayern win again. But it went down to the last day of the season, which is refreshing for the German league, where it was literally down the last day rather than decided 5 6 weeks out. Munich's dominance is now starting while they're winning. They're not winning convincingly, and the points totals are nowhere near as much as they were before. They've really come back to earth with a bump. They've definitely come back, and the other clubs haven't taken the next step. It won't be 20 in a row because I don't think the German FA would allow that because that makes the German league look bad. They won't be 20 in a row. They will run out of steam, and I think they started to run out of steam now. And eventually they will lose for a couple. I mean, look at Italian football. I mean, obviously it was all Juventus, and now suddenly we've had 3 different league winners in 3 seasons that aren't called Juventus, and suddenly it's become interesting again. And all of them had one previously, but it all had been a long time since they'd won previously, and suddenly you've got 3 different league winners in 3 years. So there is that. And PSG don't look like they're going to be dominant from next year because they're trimming their wage bill. They're going to get rid of a load of players. If Man City do 11 in a row, I think questions would have to be asked because you look at the history of the English game. The first club to do 3 in a row was Huddersfield. The second club to do it was Arsenal, and then it was a very long time. Within a decade, 2 clubs won 3 in a row, managed by the same guy, Herbert Chapman. Right, he manages Huddersfield, goes to Arsenal, and then it was a very long time. I think until Wolves did 3 in 5 or something in the 50s. Uh, my mum's older than PSG as well. My mum's 10 years older than PSG. Mic drop. My mum is older than PSG. My dad, if he was still alive, would be older than PSG. Yeah, PSG is not an old club. And until their wealthy takeover, they weren't a successful club either. Just let that sink in. If Man City do 11 in a row, I stop watching football together. But the Bundesliga has become the Bayern League now, and I do think it's starting to harm German football. Would I say PSG a tin pot? No, they won trophies before the takeover, but it's definitely undermined the French league system when the other clubs in the top flight just cannot financially compete on a level playing field. Um, it definitely makes the league look bad. So something needs to happen. Same in German football now. Well, the gap has now come down to the last day of the season. Something does need to happen because it's a Man City side of winning. It's not great when it's the same. This is what people were saying when Manchester United, in the early Premier League era, won 13 Premier Leagues or something. It actually became a bit depressing. Yes, and Etienne though did it over many eras. They did it not all in one go. Like they did it over their entire history, whereas PSG have done 80% of their league titles in the last 15 years, or 10 years, or however many it is, right? But they've already stated we're going to drastically reduce our spending from next year. They're not going to keep Messi. They've got to trim their wage bill. They want to make themselves compliant to UEFA's new rules. So, um, if you count Bundesliga titles, I think you'll find it is Dortmund are the second most successful club for all silverware in German football. Nuremberg are not even on the same page anymore. In the Bundesliga era, it's Bayern, Dortmund, Shit, who's next? Borussia Mönchengladbach are up there. Um, Kaiserslautern have won some. Cologne, quite successful historically. Um, yeah, someone has to win. Someone else has to win soon because it is now hurting the German national side. It's hurting the German league. It's making it less competitive. It's making it less enticing for players to go to. The fact they won it on the last day of the season is a bit different. They didn't wrap it up with weeks to spare like in previous seasons. It went down to the final day. And Union Berlin were in there until the last couple of weeks as well. So there's a three-way tie at one point for the title race. And so when you've got three clubs going for the title until the last 2 weeks of the season, that's a good sign going forward. But Dortmund didn't Arsenal. Arsenal and Dortmund blew the league from a winning position. But signs are positive that clubs like RB Leipzig and Union Berlin and Bayer Leverkusen are starting to become competitive again and be close to the top and not too far off the top. So it's starting to change a little bit. But is it? I don't know. I am troubled because I think when it becomes that uncompetitive, people just tune off. Look at Scottish football. Only two clubs have won the league titles in nearly 40 years. Nearly, since the mid-80s. So it's and that's not good. So yeah, something you need to look at again, evening up, putting in transfer caps and spending caps and making it a fairer system. Um, yeah, I this is why I do my club histories, and I look at teams in other leagues. I might do some clubs from the Swiss. The Swiss league is really competitive historically. The Swiss Super League is so interesting. Um, really is actually. So is the Austrian league as well. Um, there are some really. I mean, the Swiss league, the success is really distributed all over the place. The Dutch league is quite interesting. Um, the Scandinavian leagues are quite interesting. Um, the French league, before PSG had bottomless pit of Qatari wealth, was very competitive. Um, they're too good for one league and they're not good for the other league, so it's sort of like a yo-yo team. But they've had some good players play for them, but they're a yo-yo team. But they're everyone's team go-to team in like FIFA or Football Manager. Just for the Portuguese league is not as competitive as I would like, but the Portuguese Cup is ironically quite competitive. But the Portuguese league, I think only 5 or 6 clubs have won. 3 of them from Lisbon, one from Braga, one from Porto. When it comes to location, got Benfica, Sporting, and Boavista in Lisbon. I think there's 4 teams in Lisbon actually, but there's 3 big teams in Lisbon. You've got Porto, you've got Braga, you've got Guimarães. Yeah, Boavista have won it a few times. They're the 3rd team of Lisbon. They've got the best kit. Boavista have got the best kit out of the Portuguese clubs. Done. Simple. When you Boavista last minute, it's been a while. It's been a little while. Again, I'm going to have to do club histories on clubs outside the UK, and some of the leagues are really, really more competitive than we realise. The Swiss league is, the Austrian league is. No, Boavista is in Lisbon. You've got Sporting, Benfica, Boavista. Porto is a one-club city, whereas Lisbon is a multi-club city because it's double the size, ironically. No, Boavista is in Lisbon. and yeah, definitely want to get a hold of one of their kits if I can, because it's a fantastic, fantastic jersey. Pescara, that's a their kit's fantastic with the dolphin logo and all that. That's a fantastic. The Pescara rainbow kit with the dolphin is fantastic. That was designed by a 7-year-old, by the way. You know that. That is important. Okay. But Boavista is an underrated club in Portugal. Um, is it Guimarães and the other team in Lisbon? Then? I know there's another team in Lisbon that's won the league. But the Portuguese league is really not as competitive as it should be. Um, and then you've obviously got the Swiss league, the Belgian league, got Standard Liège, Anderlecht, Club Bruges, Brussels FC, big names, big names in Belgium. You've obviously got the Dutch league is interesting. The Danish league is interesting. You've got Brondby, Odense, Michelin. Sweden, you've got Helsingborgs, Malmo, and a few other Friedrichsburg and a few other clubs in the Austrian Bundesliga. Fantastic. Rapid Vienna, um, Salzburg. Um, there's a couple of teams in Vienna actually. You've got RB Salzburg. Rapid Vienna they've got a fantastic kit as well. Austria Vienna as well, yeah. But Rapid Vienna are the best one. Vienna FC, yeah. Someone's played a lot of FIFA and Football Manager. Someone's played a lot of Football Manager and Championship Manager over the years. You can tell. Yeah, look, the Austrian league is surprisingly competitive. Um, but as I say, that's just doing a quick glance. People think, it's a lesser league in Europe. Hey, yeah, like that's because they look at the last 30 years. Pre-Champions League or Cup Winners' Cup and all that. It's completely different. I just don't do video gaming anymore. Not because I've grown out of it. I've just fallen out of love with it. Um, I generally have not got. I've fallen out of love with video games. Um, they become very generic. There's a lot of issues with the video gaming industry. Um, yeah, it's just not. I haven't grown out of it. I've just fallen out of love with it. It's the same with certain sports. I enjoy football a hell of a lot less now than what I used to, and I enjoy rugby league and ice hockey more. Um, no, EA Sports will still make the game. It's just FIFA will have their name removed, so you'll still get the same teams and players in the same leagues. It's just a branding agreement. They became pretty generic. Um, I felt Pro Evo Soccer was the better game anyway for gameplay. Um, the online microtransactions, I hadn't enjoyed it for a long time. I haven't played it for years. I think the last FIFA I played was like FIFA 14 or something, FIFA 15 or something. But as I say, I haven't played for a long time. Yeah, it's to do with money, isn't it? It's to do with Yomi and is it Namco? The publishers of Pro Evo have less money than EA Sports, and so when it comes to corporate agreements and part and Konami, that's it. When it comes to corporate agreements, partnerships, bidding for rights, when you've got less money behind you, um, and you don't make the same revenue um, on a sale, Um, it is what it is, and of course, EA Games got that agreement with the leagues as well, various European and global leagues to have their likenesses and their players and such. And then EA got a bit cheap, and FIFA like you're being cheap. Um, and, and I will admit the quality has been crap for a long time. It's become very generic. There's only so much you can do with a game like that. But I have UEFA Striker, and they didn't have all the full licenses either. So you get Glasgow Greens and Glasgow Blues, and Everton aren't in it, so it's just Liverpool, Manchester Reds, or Manchester. Um, so that is sort of similar to Pro Evo, and that's an old PS1 game that I still play occasionally. Oh, not in UEFA Striker because that comes out in 1999. So it was you didn't have the team licenses, but you had the UEFA license, so you could play for the Champions League, the UEFA Cup, and the Cup Winners' Cup in it. You could play for those trophies, but you couldn't, you know. Uh, but that's you know that was from 1999. The company that made that was Rage Games, and they had an agreement with the Channel 5 commentary. So Channel 5, as it was at the time, Ron Atkinson and Jonathan Pearce used to work for Channel 5, and they had the Cup Winners' Cup rights for, I believe, the 98-99 season. The last season, it was a European competition alongside the BBC. And so they had them do the commentary. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's going back a long time. I still have the game. I still play the game. Football Manager game exposes new European formats one season, 19th Premier League. Yeah, again, the European formats, in my opinion, are, as they currently stand, are just broken. The UEFA coefficient is broken. That's my opinion on things. Um, but greed has so too many clubs get into Europe. Um, the UEFA coefficient hurts the majority of European leagues, apart from the Big Five or Big Six, if you count the Portuguese league, which I think is better than the French league, in my opinion. Because more Champions League winners historically on the historical UEFA coefficient come from Portugal and France, but that's another debating point. So that's my viewpoint on it. But yeah, I think too many clubs qualify for Europe. The current format sucks. The proposed new format sucks. Bring back straight knockouts and the Cup Winners' Cup, and guess what? You've solved a lot of the problems. Yes, the Dutch and the Portuguese league have had more European trophy winners than the French league. Yes, that is fact. The difference is the French have won a World Cup, but the Dutch and the Portuguese haven't. Just got to put that in there. But no, jokes aside, I think I would slim back the European competitions. I would go back to basics, straight knockouts, like when you go into a hat, you get pulled out. Bring back the Cup Winners' Cup because it revalues the domestic cup competitions, and suddenly first place Champions League, second place Europa League, Cup winner, Cup Winners' Cup. So if you finish first and you get a cup double, then yes, absolutely, playing all three competitions. It's straight knockouts. It's only a handful of extra games a season rather than group stages. And guess what? Suddenly you've got rid of the big fixture congestion. Suddenly players' welfare is put first. Games mean more. There's no dead rubbers. The underdog can win. So like Malmo going all the way to the European final and Nottingham Forest making that European final in the 79. And it completely, brings back those underdog stories and those cup runs. And you see these random sides in knockout games. The current format would never get out of the group stage. But that's my opinion. I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to that. I hate the group stages. I hate the away goals rule they used to have. I hate the aggregate crap. 2 legs. Make it straight knockout, straight. Done. Done. Make it bang. But unfortunately, in the modern era, they got greedy, and then 12 to 15, 12 so clubs have got greedy. Not neutral ground. Okay, keep it 2 leg, but get rid of the aggregate. Get rid of the away goals rule completely. I think it's gone now, but you know, aggregate score may be key, but no, home and away. That's it. Bang, straight knockout. There's European football solved. You just have to go back in time to 1996. Just solved it. I've just solved European football. Just solved it. You didn't need to change it, but UEFA got greedy. A handful of clubs got greedy. Um, and the TV companies ripped us off. Basically, the European competitions are formatted in the way they are. The TV companies to justify bidding for the rights for them. The clubs want to rip off their own fan bases, hence why the European Super League idea came about. And UEFA want to make as much money from, again, a percentage of ticket sales. So basically, TV companies fucked us over, our own clubs fucked us over, and the governing body fucked us over. That's what's gone wrong with European football. Let's just wind it back. Go back to pre-group stage Champions League. Bosh. And yes, it does protect. It's called a cartel. It's the European Super League. They basically, it's just a joke. It's a joke. It's always the same clubs that make the final four. It's always the same clubs that are in the final. A handful of them. It's just boring. It is dull. It is predictable. It is not fun anymore. Look at the history of the competition when it was the European Cup. Look at the history of the old UEFA Cup. Look at the history of the old Cup Winners' Cup. My God, it was fucking interesting because every different club could win it. Now it's become boring. It's become predictable, and Sevilla are playing Roma tomorrow night. Mourinho doesn't lose European finals. Sevilla don't use Europa League finals. Let's see how that plays out. Roma are going to back-to-back European titles. Mourinho is going for back-to-back European titles. Never lost a European final ever. He wins them a lot. But no, I think we need to have the big clubs getting knocked out. We need the smaller clubs to go on a run because it draws more fans in. It draws new fans. Unfortunately, the greed of a handful of clubs, UEFA and the TV companies, they've just been jacking us off for years. And now you only get the 3 finals on free-to-air coverage because BT Sport having the sole rights, which is classed as a monopoly, by the way, which I believe is illegal under UK broadcasting, isn't it? I think a monopoly. I thought monopolies were illegal. I thought cartels were illegal, as in business cartels, not drug cartels. Or drug cartels are, but having a business cartel is illegal, isn't it? It's against competition, which is what the Champions League, Europa League, and UEFA Europa Conference League was meant to be for the smaller league, the smaller leagues to get success. That hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. It's a joke. Yeah, look, Malmo making a European final back in the day can't happen now because of the UEFA coefficient and the group stage structure. Just, the whole system is broken completely. They need to wind it back to when it was the champions of each country plus the holders from the year before, if you got two teams from the same country, right? Wind it back. And UEFA went and fucked it because they were scared of the clubs threatening a breakaway European competition, the European Super League, all those years ago. So they kept reformatting it. They rebranded, they reformatted. They had two group stages at one point, which is just ludicrous. I only watched the finals because they devalued the competition so much. It's just not, it's not an even playing field, and it's just not the same. It's just broken. The system is broken. But enough of me ranting because I don't think the other viewers want to hear me rant as well. But that's my view on it. I've solved European football and all the problems, and it will make a lot of fans very, very happy because no one likes the dead rubbers. The attendances are actually shite at a lot of the time in European, especially in the group stage games. The attendances are terrible. They never sell out. Too many dead rubbers. The third place team in the Champions League ends up in the Europa League, devaluing that competition. I think the third place teams in the Europa League end up in the Conference League, devaluing that competition. So you reward failure. Let that sink in. You reward failure from the competition above by allowing them to jump into the competition below. You're rewarding failure. Let that sink in. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, again, UEFA coefficient. UEFA coefficient. I'm just going to drop that in there. UEFA coefficient, and not and yeah. I mean, if Rangers win that European final last year, we're having a different debate about Scottish football because that helps the UEFA coefficient. It helps Scottish football. They don't. Well, they don't care. They've beaten Rangers this season. It doesn't matter. Same with Rangers. They've beaten, when they win. But if Rangers win that European Europa League final, um, yeah, Europa League final last year, that changes the debate, about the UEFA coefficient because it goes in Scotland's favour then. And yes, yeah, too many old firm, too many Edinburgh derbies as well, uncompetitive league, lack of money. There you go. You overdo the product, you oversell it, it cheapens it, makes it less. But the two clubs hate each other, the fan bases hate each other. They're sectarian, they're violent, they're drunk, they're abusive, they're scumbags, they're racists. Yeah, the Hibs Heart derby at the weekend ended with the players having a punch up and the fans having a punch up. But it made big news north of the border. It made big news on the BBC. It was a feisty encounter which involved the police. But anyway, I'm going to call that an evening. I don't think the internet wants to hear me drone on about this. But yeah, no, the Capitals are the Hibs Hearts gets nasty. If not more so than the old firm in Glasgow. And people forget that there's a big sectarian hatred in Edinburgh as well, because it's a thing. And Scottish football is rife with, really don't just yeah nastiness, but that's the thing, and they get quite particular up north of the border. Yeah, look, Scottish football's been uncompetitive for a very long time. But as I say, if Rangers had won that European final last year, the debate changes a little bit because the UEFA coefficient goes in that league's favour. So instead of having to go through qualifying rounds to get into the group stages, you're automatically qualified for the group stages. If that makes sense. But as I say, yeah, it's been overdone. It's like the Ashes in cricket. they've milked that to death. That's devalued as a product because the ECB and Cricket Australia, as part of that ICC cartel alongside the Board of Cricket in control India, dominate the cricketing world. They've done that to death. Yeah, 2005 was peak cricket. 2005, 2009 was peak. I'm not, because cricket is dying a death because the ECB, the ICC, they can't govern the game properly. They cannot govern the game properly. The ECB have already scrapped the 100, so it just shows how harebrained they are. They don't know what they're doing. And put the test matches back on 3-2 where it is not hard. Do I think of? No, I've met him. He's a prick. My view on that. I've met him. He's not a particularly desirable individual. They say don't meet your heroes. No, he is a bit of a pisshead. He's a prick. Great player, but he's a prick. Personal opinion. You probably thought I was a prick, but then again, I was doing my job rather than getting cunted. Look, he should not be presenting Top Gear for one. He's an absolute moron for two, and I could not care less. Cricketer, as a kid growing up watching rugby, I was a fan, right? Yes, they can. They're continuing it for the women. I think they're scrapping it for the men, and no one gives a fuck about the 100. So I hope it fails. I really do. It is a pointless format. It's a harebrained scheme written up. No, I was actually kind of glad to realise, because I'd already heard a lot of the rumours of him being a bit of a pisshead and a bit of a moron and a bit of a thicko, and of course the Pedalo accident I just found hilarious. And as I got older, you realise actually, and you start going, they're pissed all the time. They must be real dickheads on a night out. And then you realise, when I listen to some of these podcasts now and interviews with ex-professionals, they talk about, oh yeah, we went out on the sauce. You're thinking, yeah, no, I wouldn't enjoy that kind of atmosphere. I mean, well, look, the ECB have already cost themselves a fortune by having a shit TV deal with Sky because they've had loads of fans tune off, hence why they've got the 100, because they're desperate to try and engage with the fan base again, and they're doing it the wrong way. They've been criticised for the sponsor, which is a fast food company. The advertising for it, there've been complaints to Ofcom for breaching advertising standards. I don't know. And I couldn't care less. Let me just see. I heard rumours they were scrapping it for the men, keeping it for the women. I couldn't care less, to be honest, about the 100. I've never been sold on it. It doesn't fix. It doesn't fix the problems that cricket has. Put it on free-to-air TV, you go a long way. ECB. ECB the 100, which we don't want. Okay, they are apparently continuing it. Last edition. Yeah, but if you're pissing off the fans who do like cricket, it's not going to work. And those fans who don't like cricket anyway. So if you're already pissing off your fans that already like cricket, you're not going to get the ones who don't like the sport watching. It's plain and simple. History. A new city-based 2020 cinema was proposed. Well, originally it was going to be a 2020. We'll think of some more on. Right, the profitability. Here we go. The profitability of the 100 has been a subject of debate. In 2016, a report produced by Deloitte had predicted the tournament would make 27 million profit a year. The ECB had reported in 2022 that the 100 made an 11.8 million profit. But then another report produced this year showed it has made a loss, right, of 9 million in its first 2 years. But yeah, I hope it fails. I mean, 10 ball overs. I mean, that's just, you know, crap. And each bowler can, can only bowl 20 balls per game. Yeah, listen to this. The format of the game is 100 balls per innings, a change of ends after 10 balls. Bowlers deliver either 5 or 10 consecutive balls. Each bowler can deliver a maximum of 20. Each bowling side gets a strategic timeout of 2.5 minutes. A 25 ball power play, in which only 2 fielders are allowed outside the 30-yard circle. The non-striker must return to their original end after a court dismissal. No balls are worth 2 runs and a free hit. Slow over rates are penalised by 1 fewer fielder being permitted outside the ring for the final line. That just makes no sense. Reaction. The decision to create an autonomy format of cricket with teams based into 7 major cities is a split opinion. Some current players have been positive. Of course they have. Because they're on centralised contracts. They have no choice. The former MCC chief Keith Bradshaw said he hoped the 100 ball tournament would not have an innovation for innovation's sake. Thank you. And voiced his concern the new format would mean the ECB would not exploit the T20 boom. The England Wales. Oh, if Virat Kohli has gone, I don't like the commercialisation of cricket, and he plays in the IPL, that's. After teams branding was announced, anti-obesity groups criticised the sponsorship from KP Snacks. Social media has been split. Opposed the 100 began trending on Twitter with a vocal selection group has made a former of counties whose home grounds are not among the 8 used by 6 franchises. Women cricket's been particularly enthusiastic. At the conclusion of the inaugural season, it was revealed that 55%, only 55%, so 45%. Oh dear, viewing figures dropped in the second year on TV. So they're already losing viewers. I hope it fails. I really do. Can't stand a sport that's got to use gimmicks to try to, is a sport in crisis. Gavin Henson, yeah, he's a moron. I've met quite a few, sports people, but yeah, I've got no interest in the 100 because the rules make no fucking sense. And how is that going to attract any fans to the game if when they, actually watch a test match or a T20 match, it's like only bowl 6 balls, but I hear I can bowl up to 20. The bowler can do as many overs as he fucking wants. It's test cricket. He can bowl. You can do a Jimmy Anderson with the Ashes test, by bowling a 10-hour day. Would you say they were mostly good or bad experiences? Mixed. I've had some good ones and I've had some bad ones. But of course, it's hard to follow. If you just read, I read the format. It's ridiculous. You can bowl 5 bowls in a row, 10, but you can bowl 20 maximum. So what? They've actually rewritten rules of cricket just for this. It's got its own rules. It's not even cricket. It's a completely different sport. So best I've met. Actually, Gary Lineker was quite friendly when I've met him a few times. Gary Lineker's quite a friendly chap. Will Carling's a knob. Met him, former England rugby union captain. Absolute knob of a man, not particularly nice. Met a couple of golfers. Met quite a few. I've met Steve Coppell, Alan Pardew. He's a knob. Adam Federici. He's absolutely hilarious. He's quite funny because his I don't know if it's his current or ex partner. She's an absolute piece of work, and he's like really sorry. I feel really bad. Um, no, he's a dickhead. He's a dickhead. I met Dalgleish. I met David James was quite nice when I met him. McManaman, if I couldn't understand what he was saying, Steve McManaman, but I nodded. I met Robbie Fowler, Ian Rush, John Barnes was very nice, very friendly. No, I bet loads actually, quite a few. But to be honest, I, I, I was Ian Rush was his last professional season. Ian Rush was all right actually. Ian Rush was all right. He was right at the end of his career though. So he'd had a very successful career. And of course, he's met so many people. He must go, I'm really bored of this, but actually, he was very patient. To be fair, the Sheffield Wednesday and Liverpool players in '96 were exceptionally patient. You know, considering they just played a game and all that, and they've obviously had to meet fans all the time. And they were two of the top teams in the country at the time. Well, and Sheffield Wednesday were still a good side at the time. Liverpool were just slightly on the decline, but was still, I did had some really good players. Didn't like Stan Collymore then as a kid. Don't like him now. So yeah, but I don't like him. Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, and Ian Poulter come across as absolute just in it for the money. And yeah, I used to like Ian Poulter. He was quite a character, but actually, as he as time goes on, he comes across as a very dislikable individual. John Daly, however, now he is the Oliver Reed of cricket, of golf. Sorry, John Daly. He's hilarious. I mean, imagine if he took the game more seriously and didn't drink. John Daly. I mean, he can play drunk. Imagine if John Daly actually, was serious. Um, nah, Westwood is just there. But no, John Daly. If you want to have a character in sport who's not politically correct, does not care, pisshead, chain smoking pisshead, John Daly. He is absolutely hilarious. His random interviews, his podcasts, going out, social media content's hilarious. Um, he's like everyone's fun uncle who can play golf. And imagine if John Daly took it seriously. That's how talented John Daly is. Colin Montgomery? Yeah, Colin Montgomery, yeah, he cheated on his wife. Nick Faldo's a knob. I met him. He's an absolute prick. Um, I've met quite a few of them actually. They're not overly nice individuals. But this is what happens when you work at a golf course when I used to do the bins up near Sunningdale Golf Course, which actually ironically comes under Surrey Heath and Wentworth as well. Surrey Golf Course comes under Windsor and Maidenhead, and Wentworth comes under Surrey Heath. So yeah, you would see them a lot. And of course, you're in the bin room, and they're really shitty, and they start effing and blinding. It's like, hang on, mate, you're that shit golfer, aren't you? Well, and I've actually said this before. Hey, you choked at the Masters. Fuck off. And literally, I've done that in response to them abusing me and my work colleagues. I was like, what did you say? Are you sure? You're that shit golfer who choked at the Masters, ain't you? Go on, fuck off. You cheated on your wife, knob. And I've done that. I've actually given it back because they're up their own arse. No, like when no, it's not when it's just when you meet them and let's say because I used to do like silver service for people. I've been, I bumped into them in the street. You just bump into them, and now they, nice to meet you. And I would never ask them for an autograph or anything like that. Just let them carry on with their day. It's how their body language and oh, thank you very much. If you hold a door open or vice versa, you can tell if someone is an arsehole within about 5 seconds. Within 5 seconds, you can tell if someone is a decent person or an arsehole. And I have come across a couple of them around Windsor and all that, and London when they're driving, and they get really aggressive and all the road rage and all that, and they give it all. Do you know who I am? Yeah, you're that golfer who you're that golfer who cheated on his wife. Aren't you? You're Nick Faldo. Yeah, you shagging your caddy, weren't you? Yeah, you go fuck off. I've got no time for cheaters. I've got no time for rude people. And when they go and they expect you to, like, do you know who I am? No, actually, I don't. I've pulled that one on them before as well because they act like they're entitlement. No, bad days do not excuse it. Having a bad day does not excuse shitty behaviour. If you're shitty like that when you're having, like, that it does. When you're having a shit day, you can still have a sense of humour and be polite to people who are just doing their job. If you take out your shitness on someone else, you're a shit human being. If you're having a shit day, you leave that at the door. You don't take your problems to work. You don't take your problems home from work. If you're having a work issue, stays at work. If you're having a home issue, stays at home. You take that out on someone who's not at all. Do one. Do one. And part of the problem is they're pampered all their lives. These guys, these professional athletes now, are really pampered. They're very arrogant, have a lot of money, and a lot of them have lost touch with what it is to be a down to earth human being because they've got that playboy lifestyle or playgirl lifestyle. If you're a wealthy female, yes, yes, it definitely does. The attitude stinks. There are very. I think we need to when they're young and talented, they're coming through the age ranks of team sport or individual sports. There needs to be better guidance about if you have that injury, your career's done at like 21. Let's get you while you're in the youth ranks. Let's get you an education. Let's train you up in other skills. Maybe you can become a coach. You know, community work. They need to become more. They need to get rid of the. This is where social media and sport is a bad thing because they it's just a mess. So many really talented athletes, spend more time on their Instagram and their Twitter and their Facebook and their YouTube and TikTok or whatever, um, rather than actually focusing on the job in hand, which is to be a professional athlete. Well, look, sometimes you've got to be ruthless to get to the top. You don't always have to make friends along the way, but you can at least hold yourself in a dignified manner when you meet fans or you meet the public. If you hold yourself in a dignified manner and act in a dignified way, you can be an arsehole to your teammates. I don't care what you do to your teammates behind closed doors, but if you're actually a decent human being to like the average Joe in the street, I met Chris Kamara once at a pub. He bought me a pint. Um, Quite a nice chap, Cammy. He didn't know what was going on, of course. I don't know, Jeff. And I did. I don't know, Jeff. Of course, Jeff Stelling has now left Soccer Saturday, so weekends are ruined on Sky now. Um, but yeah, some social media is good. Like then, oh, but look, when you got like, yeah, I'm not saying relationship with social media is completely toxic. But I think there's more negative than positive now. I think we've opened Pandora's box. There's no shutting it. But then again, Twitter might go out of business by the end of the year, going at the rate of losses they're making. TikTok's now been banned in the state of Montana. That could be, And the young people say it's a war against them. It's like, no, actually, the young people don't realise they've been spied on by the Chinese. Um, Oh yeah, no, yeah, like the Comic Cons and things like that. Yes, there are some actors who suddenly put fans off, given a bad experience. Um, and yeah, it's the same with athletes as well. Um, but quite a lot of them are down to earth and quite pleasant. But there are some who are very well known for being really shitty individuals, very narcissistic, very egotistical, very rude, very disrespectful, um, and not particularly nice to be around. Tiger Woods. I mean, I would actually like to, Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong. They're Americans, so I can't comment because I've never met them and I don't live in America. But Tiger Woods allegedly is a bit of a. He comes across as obviously his affairs all came out and he comes across as a bit of a not particularly nice individual in recent times. But John Daly comes across as quite a character. Because he's open about, yeah, I drink, yeah, okay, I've had multiple divorces, yeah, he lives, he is the Oliver Reed kind of you know, of golf. He actually looks like Oliver Reed as well. Um, and then you have Ernie Els comes across as quite a nice individual. Ernie Els comes across as quite respectful. Um, never any, and then you've got people like Colin Montgomery and Tiger Woods, Nick Faldo, who cheated on their wives. Um, Tiger Woods' case, I think he shagged half of Los Angeles County in Central California, but that's another thing. Um, Tiger Woods, but Charlie Sheen, you're having a bit of a breakdown and going through half of Hollywood. I'll hold my bit. Vijay Singh, yeah, he hasn't really been in the top end of the golfing world for a while, but again, I've heard there's not some, but then this is what you hear in the rumor mill. When the rumor mill circulates, there's normally no smoke without fire. Um, yeah, but no, Roger Federer comes across as Mr. Gentleman. You don't hear rumors of Roger Federer being rude to a fan or not taking time to sign an autograph for a fan. Whereas Djokovic doesn't come across very nice. There's rumours of Djokovic not taking time for fans and being quite rude in the tennis world. And then you get to rugby league and rugby union, and it, yeah, there's like Adrian Morley, absolute animal on the field, would walk past the pub, see the grand final on or a Challenge Cup match, open the door, come in, buy everyone a pint. I've never. You can tell. You can definitely tell about Goran Ivanisevic is apparently the nicest guy ever to play tennis. Is Goran Ivanisevic, the Croatian guy who won Wimbledon in 2001. He is apparently the nicest guy to ever win Wimbledon. The nicest guy in tennis. Um, and then you obviously had Leighton Hewitt. Feelings about Leighton Hewitt are mixed with people. Nick Kyrgios is just an arsehole. Um, he's a petulant child. Mark Philippoussis has always interested me. Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf are apparently a really nice couple. Actually, they're apparently really, really nice. No, Leighton Hewitt injuries did him, but Leighton Hewitt was a world class player for a couple of years, about a 3 year period. He was at his best, but he had a lot of injuries and was very streaky in his form. But when he was on, there was about a 3 year period where he was damn good, so good. Um, But sometimes your window as an athlete is very small. Sometimes, like Roger Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, your window is quite big. Um, that doesn't mean just because Djokovic has won all this doesn't actually mean he. Greg Norman as a golfer, yeah, I used to like Greg Norman, but no, Greg Norman is definitely not nice. I have no, and there's a reason why the PGA has their own personal battle with him. And um, yeah, the golf and tennis, they're sports that do come across as very snobbish sports, and especially golf, very upper class, upper middle class. Tennis as well, yeah. I I would say you do get those individuals within tennis and within golf who I love, like John Daly, for example, and Goran Ivanisevic, who are just cult heroes, just for being themselves, um, and literally just being normal people. I mean, John Daly, if he wasn't a golfer, he's a redneck from Alabama. Um, they You're non-stereotypical tennis and golf players. Whereas you look at people like Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter and Montgomery and Greg Norman is a great white shark. But you look at some of these golfers like Nick Fowler and all that, and they don't come across as particularly nice individuals because of that self entitlement. Nick Kyrgios when he's like throwing rackets at opponents, swearing at them, swearing at umpires, and just generally being an arsehole. So you find out he's got ADHD or something, he hasn't taken his meds for a while, but no, he doesn't come across as a particularly because his attitude. It's his attitude, and it's him not controlling his emotions. When someone is that abusive and throws tantrums, that's generally a sign of, yeah, okay, not calm. This kid, and he's been done for assault, so he doesn't come. He's got assault charges. He's got to face in court and all that, and he's had legal issues. So that does say to me he's a bit of a dickhead. Um, and that's not necessarily a good role model for people. And when you're sitting down I would love to interview some of these people. So I think you're a knob. Could you please clarify? Um, because this is the thing you were always told not. If let's say a sports star, because I do actually think um, a couple of actual athletes subscribe to the channel. Ironically, they've kept quiet about it, but a couple of them also follow me on Twitter. So I do think some professional athletes are subscribers, and they'll probably agree with her. That guy is a dickhead. Um, if a professional athlete was to go, look, bang, and leave a comment saying, I would like you to interview me, or I would happily have an interview, or have a sit down chat, that would just my jaw would drop because I would laugh. It was one of those athletes I've just slagged off for 25 minutes, half hour. But honestly, I am aware of a couple of ice hockey players who followed me on Twitter, I believe, also follow me on here and are subscribed. Now, whether they're using a their own personal name or a hidden account, but um, tennis fans in general can be quite sports fans in general. It's a minority that can be quite toxic, and certain fan bases of certain teams and players in sport are more toxic than others. But for the most part, most sport fans are pretty reasonable people. We watch sport to escape the everyday, grind. Um, we don't want the politics. We don't want, the protest movements. Fuck off with them. This is our hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however many hours the sporting event. You know, I think one of them was quite. I think one of them is quite a well-known player, and the other one is in the AHL on a two-way contract with the Anaheim Ducks. Um, and I think there's a few other um, individuals, athletes. I think there is. And I've just sat here for like the best part of 45 minutes slagging off current former athletes and players. Oh, um, one of them was a reasonably big name in the NHL. I don't watch golf anymore. I know I lost interest in me. Don't even watch the Masters. As a kid, it was compelling. Yeah, look, I was allowed to watch all 4 days of the Masters in full, from the first tee off in the morning to the final putt on the 18th on the fourth day. And again, the TV companies and the PGA and Augusta National and players got greedy, and it went behind a paywall, and that's for the overseas broadcasters. But they got greedy, and a lot of sports have done that, and they're paying the price, and they will continue to pay the price for a long time. It's just fact. It's just how it works out. I mean, there is no other way of describing it. Well, the viewing figures could not tell you. Could not tell you. Um, I've given up with golf. I couldn't care. I don't care if the PGA, LIV, the DP Tour all went and fucked themselves, because what we've seen is a lot of millionaires squabbling about how much money they're going to get for entering a golf tournament in a corrupt dictatorship in the Middle East. I've just and when you golf peak, I would say the 90s, early 2000s. I would say, but I've completely just I've as I say, football or soccer for the North Americans, because there will be people from North America and Australia watching this later on at a later time after I've invented. So association football, soccer. I'm falling out of love with. I don't enjoy it as much as I did. Golf, don't watch it anymore. Snooker, I've tuned out of. I'll still cover like the real breaking news and all that. When it's a player retires, or like when Stuart Bingham, for example, got banned for breaching betting rules. Did a video on that, and that actually got a lot of interest. Um, but certain sports, I just don't enjoy it, and it hurts me to say that. It does hurt me to say that I don't enjoy this anymore. Whereas the rugby league, the ice hockey, um, international rugby union, not youth club international. I do really enjoy watching. I actually have watched the table tennis at the Olympics um, thoroughly one year. There was one time I was watching. Um, I think it actually was the 2012 Olympics. Might have been 2008. It was one of the Olympic Games recently in recent years, and I think it was the London Olympics. For whatever reason, I was bored. Oh no, it might have been 2000. I can't remember. And I just watched the table tennis all day on the red button. It was hilarious. I was so bored, and I just watched it. And these Chinese and Koreans are just beating the crap out of this plastic ball, and they're like really going for it. I'm just like, this is actually kind of interesting. Um, Snooker, golf, darts are dead to me right now. Football getting that way. I don't mind players going to get a paycheck, especially if it's a short career. There is a way of going about it, in the way of conducting yourself in the media, in the way people like Westwood and Poulter, journos, have really given it to them and made them look really stupid. especially when we were having the big discussion about the human rights record of taking the Football World Cup to Qatar and all that. And now we're taking golf to Saudi. And I tell you now, Poulter had no answer for it. The journos destroyed him. Right? Absolutely, he was done. He was done. He was basically labelled a hypocrite, um, greedy, and that's what they are. They already get well paid in the PGA. They get well paid in the PGA and DP tours. The majors, they get well paid, well down. The order. You get prize money and sponsors and all that. And their sponsors will, pay them anyway. They've got stupid amounts of money. A lot of them are tax exiles because they've declared themselves living in Dubai or Monaco, right, or places like that, or the Virgin Islands, or wherever they've located themselves. So I ain't got a lot of sympathy for them at all. There's earning a paycheck, and then there's just play for free. Then you've got that much money. You're a tax exile. You are whinging about what? And you're going to a country with one of the worst human rights records in the world, taking blood money. And you're getting called out on it and you've got no response. So, yeah, got no sympathy for it. Right now, are there any sports that I'd rather play than watch? No, not anymore. The body just can't cope with it. Shoulders buggered, knees are buggered, back's buggered. I've had too many concussions. I'd rather just watch and let the professionals and the semi-pros beat the crap. In the past, well, I was always a goalkeeper in football, really. So you're already watching the game anyway while I was playing. You're observing what's in front of you. I was a goalie in field hockey. Again, you're watching what's in front of you. So when your team's dominant in possession, you're just there getting a free show. And then occasionally you have to save the ball. Cricket, I don't mind watching or playing. Worst position to play. If you're having a bad game, fall back in rugby or rugby league. If you're having a bad game, you're having a bad game. There's no escaping it. If you're having a mare, and it's just it's just a very lonely place. And if you're in goal in football, field hockey, or ice hockey, for example, and again you're having a bad game, and you're having a mare, that is a very lonely place. You've conceded that shocking goal, and you've made that knock on, you botched the catch, you missed that tap. You made that mistake, shepherding the ball out of play in the opposition. But yeah, it's a very lonely place, which is probably why a lot of hockey goalies and football goalies are completely batshit crazy. No, because I would probably concede that one goal that gets the England manager sacked. But Graham Taylor, you've just got me the sack. That 1990, yeah, the 93 qualifier for World Cup 94 that we didn't qualify for, and San Marino took the lead after like 25 seconds, and Graham Taylor's on the touchline, and he's basically, "You've got me the sack," and he's just blown up. It's hilarious. Um, well, with England, when they constantly pass it back to Pickford, who's had a shocking season for Everton, by the way. How he's still England goalkeeper is beyond me. But Southgate is Southgate, and I don't understand the logic behind some of the England selections anymore. Um, no, Bobby Zamora got a lot of stick from fans. If you're sat in row Z and the ball hits your head, it's Zamora because he had a dreadful run with not being able to hit the target for a while when he was playing for West Ham and Fulham. He had a couple of dry spells and he was all over the place. Um, I think from where the team is now, from where the team was when he took over, there is improvement. I will say that. And in the last World Cup, we actually played a really good style, and we just there was just a couple of moments in that game where the referee was that bad for both sides. It wouldn't have mattered who won the game. Both sets of fans, I think, would have been equally frustrated with the refereeing performance. Um, so we could have got to a semi-final by a shocking refereeing decision. It just Harry Kane. If you're sat in row K and the ball comes your way, it's Kane. It's Harry Kane. Um, but yeah, if Harry Kane gets that penalty, we might be having a different conversation. Um, Harry Kane, will he wait and move? I think that window. Well, I think that I don't. We'll wait and see on that. In my opinion, because Tottenham haven't got a manager and they ain't got a plan. And we know when Conte was appointed eventually, um, there were rumours after he wasn't appointed, when a sub, after the Euros and all that, um, that that managerial search for Spurs, where Nuno was put in, then they sack him, and then Conte turned over and got hired. Harry Kane at that time after the Euros was I think hours away from leaving. Um, and I honestly, this is some of the rumour coming out. He was on the verge of leaving because I think he's one of the players who tried to get Pochettino to come back, and Pochettino's gone to Chelsea. Pochettino ain't coming back. Tottenham. Spurs are buggered themselves because their window for winning silverware is just shut hard in their face on them. And now, oh, I can see him going somewhere, but where? I can't see him moving to another club in London. Potentially to one of the Manchester clubs. Potentially. Maybe out of left field, Newcastle. Maybe out of left field when he goes to Newcastle because they've got money to spend. And they're a team on the up that's competing in the Champions League. He needs to move. He's 30 soon. He hasn't got long left to win a trophy. A League Cup medal to me means more than a Prem goal scorer. Yeah, he needs to win something. Um, maybe a cup double. Like he's had opportunities to win a League Cup, FA Cup, Premier League, Champions League, and the team around him and himself have also failed to perform in the pressure moment. Um, but also transfer decisions and managerial appointments have been haphazard. Uh, oh, we also have for Shearer's record. Well, then again, Shearer only won the one trophy in his career, and that was the Premier League. So, but at least Shearer won a trophy. Kane hasn't. Got a couple of runners-up medals and a couple of semi-finals, and well, it's interesting because the talk about Harry Kane being unsettled at Spurs has been going on now since before Pochettino got the sack. The season that Pochettino got sacked, there was already that murmuring of unrest. But yeah, a European club like a Bayern or PSG or Harry Kane would suit Italian football. He's a big physical centre forward, and the pace of the game's a little bit slower, so he can prolong his career. He's built like Ibrahimovic, just a little bit slimmer, and he's a bit younger. So there you go. Letizia, a great player, but no trophies was good enough. Yeah, I know he's Matt. Actually, Matt Letizia is not overly. I've listened to some of his interviews. He's not overly that odd away from the game. I think some of the things he stated have been taken out of context. Um, but no, Matt Letizia isn't. Because Matt Letizia is like Glenn Hoddle. He's a bit misunderstood off the field. Um, but Matt Letizia is ironically very humble off the field as well. That's what's very, very interesting about Matt Letizia. But he had opportunities to leave Southampton, and he got very close again by Harry Kane. He could be a one club man. He wins no silverware. He had opportunities to move, and he didn't. So, and he had opportunities, and he decided to stay where he was. Graham Lasone, he'll go Matt Letizia. He came like Graham Lasone, who actually won silverware and was possibly one of the best wing backs this country's ever produced. I'm sorry, how could you forget about Graham Lasone? Admittedly from the other island, but yeah, but he I think had a longer career, and he was willing to challenge himself at a different. And they both played for Southampton at the same time as well. The last season Matt Letizia is playing for Southampton. Matt Letizia. His last season, Graham Lasone, he was in the Southampton side, and Graham Lasone had a few years left in him. Graham Lasone was willing to go from one end of the country to the other and back again, and was willing to challenge himself. And he won silverware. And when you're willing to challenge yourself and take yourself out of the comfort zone of the club you're at, and then yeah, but when you got a player in the Championship who's tearing it up, the Premier League is a different kettle of fish. Um, Completely different kettle of fish. And just because he's tearing up at Bristol City, it's probably because the system they're playing in, which suits him, their style of play, pace that they play at, their intensity, tactics, his teammates, he has good rapport, good combinations. He'd go to a big six club and sit on the bench and play like 5 games a season and do sod all. Or he'd be like a Theo Walcott who's just generally got pace and just go and just pick up a ball and just run at defenders. And that's worst pundit in football. Oh god, worst commentator. All of them. I think the level of commentary now and the level of punditry now, I've just completely tuned out. I just watch the games for the games. I have the commentary on as background noise because I mean Jonathan Pearce I don't mind, but it's, I think his time has come. I think he's move along. Pearce, you've done your time. The punditries. I mean, Micah Richards is my favourite pundit because he's young, he's enthusiastic, and he's bloody knowledgeable about the game. And he always he has great knowledge, a great enjoyment, and he's enthusiastic, positive. You never see Micah Richards look, you know. I don't mind Tilsley. I can tolerate him. Can't stand Neville. Can't stand Carragher. Um, but Clive Tilsley, I can tolerate him. He's no John Motson. Um, but you know, I don't like Carragher. I don't like Neville. Roy Keane's just Ian Wright's another pundit I like because he see the football fan. You can see the football fan in him, which is something. Um, But yeah, they don't make them like they used to. That's my opinion um, on that. In my opinion, right. The Scottish guy at ESPN FC is also clueless. Oh, I know the one you're on about. Yeah, he is. He is pretty much a dribbler. But you know, you can be a bang average player. Yeah, Craig. Is it Craig Burley? Is it Burley? Is it Craig Burley? Or was Craig Burley the manager? I can't remember. Something Burley, yeah. Well, at first I can't understand a word he's bloody saying, and I know Scottish people, but his accent is just, yeah, no, I can't stand him. I don't know how the American audience can understand what you're saying because I bloody can't. Um, but yeah, anyway, I'm going to call that a day. We've been going for 4 hours. Really interesting. Really enjoyed it. Um, some interesting questions. We worked out I don't like a lot of sports stars because they come across as absolute idiots. But yeah, the level of commentary and punditry is not the level it was at. Oh no, I can understand Shaka Hislop. He's well easy to understand because he's West Indian with a hint of the West Midlands. So Shaka Hislop is easy. Shaka Hislop is easy because he doesn't talk fast, but because he's got that West Indian, Anglo-West Indian accent, it can be a bit difficult for some people. But he doesn't talk fast. Shaka Hislop is actually very easy to understand, and much like Mika Richards, he lives and breathes the game. He's a fan of the game. He comes into it with humour and energy, and very intelligent. And he's a cult hero at Portsmouth and at West Ham. And I've seen Shaka Hislop play, and he was a brilliant goalkeeper in his time, in my opinion, anyway. I think he played for Aston Villa as well at one point. Shaka Hislop, underrated goalkeeper, um, but he's all right. I can deal with Shaka Hislop easily. He's not a bad pundit. He's not the best pundit. He's not bad, but he was an underrated goalkeeper when he played. Very good goalkeeper actually when he played. Um, and he always played on sides that were average. They weren't great. They weren't bad, but they were never competing for silverware regularly, so he didn't get the attention of other goalkeepers. Yes, I remember Grobbelaar at the end of his career, and his career ended under a cloud. So again, um, some and that sticks with some older fans is you know the negatives. That one incident that ruins a reputation. So Grobbelaar is the betting scandal and potential match fixing, and it ended his career. He went to court and everything. It ended his career. Um, and I think Neville Southall got roped into that somehow. But Grobbelaar, yeah, the betting scandal and the alleged match fixing and taking, bribes to fix games. People remember Grobbelaar for the wobbly knees in the European final, I think against Feyenoord or Roma, and they remember him for taking bribes to fix games. And I think in a similar, I think Australians have a lot of good sports. Sorry to say. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'd have to agree with them. I'm a massive Aussie sports fan, but their rugby league players let them down. Their rugby union players let them down. Their football or soccer players let them down. Their AFL players let them down. Um, but then you have boxers like Tim Tszyu and his brother Nikita, who are their father obviously was Russian, but they were being born and raised in Australia, and they box under Australian licenses, and they've been born, as I say, born and raised there. Mark Cambosis, they come across actually as quite nice. Yeah, Vidmar, I remember Tony Vidmar. You had Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, they were quite likable characters. And then you had Mark Bosnich, who spent half his time completely off his trolley on drugs. Uh, Good goalkeeper, absolutely coked off his tits. Mark Schwarzer comes across as quite a nice guy. He's quite a good pundit when he's called in to do commentary and punditry for internationals and league games and cup games. I like Mark Schwarzer. Yes, on number Tony Bidmar. But it is what it is. But no, the Aussies, unfortunately, the reputation of some Aussies is not great. You've got Warner in the cricket; he's an absolute arsehole. Sorry, but you just catch a guy on a bad day. Anyway, I'm going to call that a day. Thank you very much for all the questions. And I will say goodbye for now. Thank you for all your questions, and I'll have some more content for you guys tomorrow night with the Europa League final. So, for now, it's goodbye.